panel. Now, before I run through the order of business, I just want to point out that members of the panel are using electronic devices, as it's council policy to use electronic agendas, but please be assured that they will not be communicating with the outside world during the decision-making part of the application. Will not be communicating with the outside world during the decision-making part of the application process. For the openness of local governance bodies regulations 2014, members of the public and the press are entitled to take photographs or to film the meeting. However, I would request that it's done in a way that does not disturb or disrupt other members of the public from being able to see, hear, or be able to speak freely. And once we start the substantive part of the business, the order of business will be as follows. So first, I'll invite the officer to present their submission to the panel, following which I will ask the objectors to speak, after which I'll invite the applicants or the applicant's agents to speak, and finally I will give an opportunity to ward councillors and members of parliament who are here who wish to speak. Now, I will be allowing, due to the number of objectors, I will be allowing half an hour for the objectors to speak, and I will also be allowing the same amount of time for the applicants to speak. So each side will have half an hour, following which I will give ward councillors and members of parliament 5 minutes each to speak. Now, the planning process must be a fair process and allow equal opportunity both to those who support the development and to those who oppose it. And if the process is not equitable, then the local planning authority can face legal challenges. As such, I do need to be very careful to ensure that both sides are held equally and fairly. Now, whilst this is a meeting that is being held in public, it is not a public meeting. So any right to the public to speak is only at Chair's discretion, and I would ask those members of the public who have been prearranged to speak to ensure they only speak at that particular time. And should it be the case that we are unable to continue in public, then I do have discretion to continue the meeting in private. However, my intention is that if all things go to plan, that we should be able to continue in this chamber. Now, once the objectors have had their opportunity to speak, the applicants have spoken, and the ward councillor and MP have spoken, I will then pass over to members of the panel for debate. Now, during the time when members are debating, there will be no further involvement from neither the objectors nor the applicants, unless a point raised by a member of the panel requires clarification. Should that be the case, I will then make a decision as to whether it requires an answer, and if so, will invite an appropriate response. That response must be limited to the question that has been asked, and there is not a further opportunity to share points that have not been made. Finally, once a motion has been raised by a member of the panel to either defer the application, refuse the application, or allow the application, in each case giving material planning grounds to do so, I will then take the motion to the vote. I shall vote along with other members of the panel. In the event of a tie, I will have a further casting vote in order to determine the application. I do hope this is clear. Now, I appreciate that decisions will be made today which may not please everybody. It's the nature of such a panel. But I would like to think that everyone will leave the meeting satisfied that they've had a fair and equal hearing throughout the process. And on that note, I can now begin the formal agenda. Because this meeting is live streamed, I would like to thank those members of the public who have taken the time to participate in the democratic process, both in the chamber, in the public gallery, and from afar. If I could start with item 1, please. Claire, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. Apologies have been received from councillors Jim Darson and Peter Jones.
Thank you very much. And can you confirm that the meeting is quorate?
Yes, Chair, there were 13 members present and the quorum is 5 members.
Thank you very much. Okay, the panel is asked to consider whether it agrees to the inclusion of the items listed in part 1 of the agenda. Is that agreed?
Great.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Do any members of the panel have any declarations of interest that need to be raised? No. Very good. Item 4. To approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of July 2026. Is any member of the panel prepared to move that, please? Thank you very much. Is that seconding there? Thank you. The minutes have been moved and seconded. Are they approved? Thank you very much. Item 5, planning applications and related management control. 5A, item PA 2026-0749, land east of Boothstown, Salford. I believe the presenting officer is Miss Stewart. Sorry, Natalie. When you're ready, there are screens where you'll be able to see the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. If we could just share the presentation, please. Thank you. So this application relates to a site known as land east of Boothstown. Outline permission is sought for a phased development of up to 282 dwellings with access off Occupation Road, together with open space, children's play space, new and enhancements to footpaths and cycleways and associated engineering operations. This slide shows the application site outlined in red. The site extends to just short of 23 hectares, of which approximately 11 hectares is identified as developable land. It's bound to the north by Lee Road and extends southwards almost to the Bridgewater Canal and associated towpath. To the east is Occupation Road, as well as existing footpaths and cycleways, with the RHS Bridgewater site further beyond. To the west, the site has an irregular boundary, largely excluding Alderwood here and sitting adjacent to Boothstown Farm here, as well as a council-owned area of land to the west, which sits between the application site and the Bridgewater Marina, and this site includes a public right-of-way that runs from north to south adjacent to the application boundary. We've just got some photos here of the site is viewed from Lee Road and Occupation Road. I'll just leave those on for a second. And then some further site photos just showing various views of the site. Amazing. Is that better? The site forms part of Places for Everyone Allocation 25. Places for Everyone was adopted in March 2024 following the conclusion of the examination by independent inspectors on behalf of the Secretary of State. Places for Everyone is a long-term plan of 9 Greater Manchester districts which covers the period up to 2039 and forms part of Salford's Statutory Development Plan alongside the Salford Local Plan. It provides a strategic plan for sustainable growth across the plan area, identifying the amount of new development to be delivered across the districts, including and allocating land for development that was previously greenbelt, whilst also designating areas of new greenbelt. So the land east of Boothstown comprises one of the 2 strategic allocations for housing development within Salford, with the site being selected as it offers one of a small number of opportunities within Greater Manchester to deliver very high value housing in an extremely attractive environment, benefiting from the established premium housing market as well as its location immediately adjacent to the RHS Bridgewater. The extent of the red line for the allocation is shown on the left and includes the application site together with Boothbank Farm and Alderwood, which is here, as well as the council owned site here. So the PFE allocation states that the area between the existing settlement of Boothstown and the RHS Bridgewater site, between Lee Road and the Bridgewater Canal, will be developed at around 300 dwellings. It states that the site will be developed at a low density to an exceptional quality, primarily targeting the top end of the housing market with the intention of attracting and retaining highly skilled workers within Greater Manchester. So the site was previously the subject of a hybrid planning application submitted back in 2023, which sought full planning permission for 65 dwellings to the northern part of the site, with outline consent for up to a further 285 dwellings with vehicular access from Occupation Road. So that application sought for up to 350 dwellings in total. Following review and discussions with officers, that application was withdrawn, and the current application, which seeks outline consent with all matters reserved except for access from Occupation Road, was later submitted. As originally submitted, the application sought permission for up to 295 dwellings, but again, following further discussions with officers and consultees, the number of dwellings has since been reduced to 282, which is an overall reduction of 68 from that 350 proposed under the original hybrid application. And it's a scheme for 282 dwellings that's for consideration today. So the application is supported by a parameters plan. It contains fixed parameters that future reserve matters applications must adhere to. The parameters plan is shown here. It includes a proposed vehicular access off Occupation Road, an illustrative location for the play area, and it also identifies a maximum building height of 3 stories and 13 metres across the site, as well as securing the landscape buffer to the east as required by Places for Everyone. It secures no development in the peat areas to the southern part of the site, as well as development buffers to Alder Wood here, Shawbrook here, and then the utilities easement that also runs through the site. The application is also supported by an illustrative master plan which shows areas for residential parcels, green infrastructure, children's play, improved connections with the RHS Bridgewater, the Bridgewater Canal, and to the public right-of-way to the west of the site. The design code submitted with the application includes a number of illustrative plans and requirements for land uses across the site. The design code splits the site into character areas, as is shown here, with key design principles set out for each of the areas, as well as requirements for open space, public realm, landscaping and SUDs. The design code sits alongside the parameters plan and will inform the detailed design of future reserve matters application to ensure that important landscape and ecological features are retained and that the site is developed to an appropriate density and scale. The design code also establishes the need for connections to existing routes, together with a hierarchy for street networks. The location of the access points and routes shown on these plans are indicative for the purposes of this outline application, but the design code does include mandatory requirements for vehicular access, together with pedestrian and cycle access points. So one here to the northwest corner of the site to provide a 3-metre wide shared route connecting Lee Road with Occupation Road. It also requires provision for multiple pedestrian and cycle connections to the RHS side, at least 2 connections to the public right-of-way to the west. It also sets out requirements for design and dimensions of roads. So the level of detail is taken a step further on the illustrative layout plan, which provides a detailed layout which demonstrates just one way in which the site could be developed for the quantum of development sought, noting that this would not be necessarily the final layout of the application is in outline form. So the illustrative layout is shown here as part of the landscape master plan, which identifies the various elements of landscaping to be included across the site. So the site will include substantive on-site open space. The illustrative plan, again shown here, indicates how this might be provided on-site, and the quantum detailed in the table is to be secured through the design code, again which future reserve matters applications will be required to accord with. Open space on-site will include children's play space, public amenity space, informal outdoor sports by way of cycle paths, and facilities such as an outdoor gym or trim trail. Commuted sums are to be provided for indoor and outdoor sport, and allotments to be provided off-site, although provision is included within the design code for raised beds and food production within an on-site community garden. This plan shows the location of the peat areas in the southern parts of the site, So just noting that no development will be located within the peat areas. The area will provide for a sponge park to absorb excess surface water and preserve the peat, to create a varied habitat in line with peatland objectives, whilst also supporting controlled community access via mowed pathways to form part of the wider network within and surrounding the site. This is an approach that's been agreed and is supported by Natural England.
Oh.
In terms of flood mitigation for the site, 2 options are put forward. I'll talk through the options and I'll just explain what the plan shows. So option 1 proposes a channel to intercept and divert overland flows from Shaw Brook before returning them to the watercourse. Option 2 proposes the opening up of an existing culvert within Shaw Brook to return it to an open channel watercourse which would be capable of passing more flow than the existing culvert which it would replace. So the images show the baseline versus mitigation for both options 1 and 2, and the green indicates areas that would be previously wet and would be dry, with the darker colour in that you can kind of see around the book areas are areas that was dry that would be wet. So both options are considered acceptable. Option 2 is the preferred option, but it is relying on third-party land ownership, hence the need for an alternative option at this stage. But as I say, both are considered acceptable.
Third-party land ownership, eh?
So in accordance with the Places for Everyone allocation and local plan policy, the development will provide 50% equivalent affordable housing. 10% is proposed for on-site delivery, with the remaining 40% to be provided by way of a commuted sum. The off-site commuted sum
Minimum 10% biodiversity net gain.
per
30-year
affordable
management
unit,
sunlight.
and based on an overall scheme delivering 282 homes, this would equate to a total contribution in the region of 14 million. In addition to affordable housing, applicants are agreeable to a comprehensive package of planning obligations to mitigate impacts of the development, and these will be secured by way of a legal agreement. These are detailed on the slide, and the figures in yellow are just illustrative figures based on the development of 282 units and the illustrative mix submitted as part of the application. So they might change slightly as reserve matters application come in, but it just gives a broad indication of the sums involved. So the planning obligations set out are in addition to the package of highways and accessibility improvements, which we'll come on to shortly.
Well, you've not talked about biodiversity net gain, I know.
Representations, there's been a significant response to publicity for the application, as is set out in the published report and the update report, and this slide provides a summary of key points raised. Whilst a number of objections raised relate to the principle of development, members are reminded of the site's allocation within Places for Everyone, which establishes the principle of its development for residential purposes. A significant number of objections relate to highway and traffic impacts, so I'll pass over to Mr. Clarence now just to talk through highways impact and mitigation.
Oops.
Thank you, Adele. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I believe some issues with the sound in the other room, but I'll try and be as loud as possible. For those that can't see the name card, I'm Mark Clements. I'm the Highways Officer that's reviewed the application on behalf of the Highway Authority and provided consultation in response to the Planning Officer. Given the nature of the highways situation on this site, we realise it's a contentious issue that's been raised by a number of people. We've added more slides than we would ordinarily into the presentation to just walk everybody through the process that we've gone through. So the first slide there just sets out key policy guidance relating to highway capacity and the basis on which we're expected to review the application. So the first bullet point there is a paragraph from NPPF, National Planning Policy Framework, that says development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network following mitigation would be severe. Highlighted there are the key phrases within that statement. In Salford's local plan, there's a very similar policy at A6, which is highway network, I won't read that out, but it's almost word for word what is stated in NPPF. So the recommendation given by the Highways Authority has to be policy-led and evidence-based, which brings me on to how the applicants presented that evidence, how with the Highway Authority's requests we've got that information we feel we need to make that evidence-based recommendation. So this is the extent of the highway network that's been considered as part of the application. Very schematic diagram there. So from left to right, we've got the Lee Road, Ellenbrook Road junction that was considered, the Occupation Road, Lee Road junction, and then the double mini roundabout, which is known as junction 13 of the M60. In terms of data collected to undertake assessment to inform that evidence-based opinion, traffic surveys were conducted by the applicant in June, July 2022 in turn time, in the morning peak between 7:30 and 9:30 and the evening peak 4 till 6. The surveys were conducted between Tuesday and Thursday, with Monday and Friday no longer being considered representative due to people opting to work from home on those days. So that ensures a robust assessment on those busiest days of the network.
Yeah.
And the surveys therefore considered to be conducted in neutral conditions. The assessment years that have been carried out, 2022, which is based on the survey flows, 2026 assessment, which was the assumed opening year at the time of the application. We're obviously at 2026 now, and it won't be opening this year, even if permitted today. But nonetheless, we've got that assessment to analyse, and also a forward year assessment of 2031 design year. Traffic has been growthed from 2022 using nationally recognised methods, DFT's National Trip End model, and that's been used to grow the 2022 survey flow to the assessment years 2026 and 2031. Lower growth rates have been accepted here in the past due to the fact it is a constraint network and couldn't physically accommodate a lot of growth during the peaks. So historically, the local authority have accepted 50% of what the National Trip End model suggested may make. That's not been done this time to ensure a robust assessment. So 100% growth added to those design years. Committed developments that are not yet built but have got permission have been included in the assessment as per the guidance set out for transport assessments. Those applications that have been included are listed there: Mosley Common, Hazelhurst Farm and Boothstown Farm, which was an application that was at the time pending, subsequently been withdrawn, but it's still included in the assessment as a worst case. Moving on to trip rates for the proposed development. So in order to make an estimate of the level of traffic that the proposed 282 houses would generate, we asked the applicant to carry out a survey of a nearby residential estate to give us locally derived trip rates, rather than adopting those that were based in Places for Everyone, which were generic and adopted in all wards and locations across Greater Manchester. So a survey was carried out at Boothstown Drive, 69 dwelling cul-de-sac. It's considered comparable in terms of its location, with it being less than 1 kilometre from the site. House types very similar to what is expected on this site, between 3 and 5 bedroom detached properties with off-street parking provided. The comparison between the rates we found from that survey versus PFE adopted rates were that the locally derived trip rates were higher, so we were right to ask for those and not accept the standard rate, generic rates. And it says they're 20% higher in the AM peak and 13% higher in the PM peak. If you note the table that's been provided, there's an extract from the transport assessment. At the time of the submission, the proposal was for 295 houses. The applicant has not reduced the number that's being tested, again on the basis that it's robust. So it tests 295 dwellings. The actual proposal, as we've already heard, is now for 282. That would cause a reduction in trip forecast by 6 and 7 two-way trips in the AM and PM peak. So not a huge number of figures, but nonetheless still errs on the side of caution by taking the higher figures. The distribution of that traffic was originally done in PFE based on a macro model, where we as the Highway Authority didn't think that was appropriate, nor did National Highways or TFGM, and asked that that be revisited to base that on census data. And in doing so, we've actually got more traffic being sent to junction 13 of the M60, which we think is realistic. So the original distribution had 23 to 26% of development trips coming from the west, that's towards Boothstown Centre, versus only 15 to 17% using the census data. So that leaves us with over 80 to 85% of the traffic heading towards junction 13, which we feel is much more realistic than the PFE adopted distribution. And this is just a table, might be a little bit confusing, but this just shows where the traffic in the AM peak, so I think you can see my cursor, hopefully you can see my cursor. We've got the various local destinations, obviously traffic will dissipate beyond that, but these are the ones that are within the study network, and we've got the percentages of the traffic that we believe will head towards or arrive from those locations, and they should, except for rounding, add up to 100% of the traffic. I've just included a short summary there at the bottom, so you can easily understand how many vehicles are expected to go to the centre of Boothstown, or conversely come from junction 13. And you'll see the first two columns are the PFE related distribution. The census distribution shows more traffic heading towards junction 13, with the figures of 85, 83, 88 and 85%. Moving on to the actual impact assessment itself. First junction assessed, Lee Road, Ellenbrook Road, shown to operate at capacity in 2031. That's with or without development, so that's generally the considered growth as a natural background growth and not the development. It's considered to operate at capacity in 2031. However, the performance only shown to deteriorate slightly between those with and without development scenarios. Looking at the Lee Road Occupation Road, which essentially will form the access to the site, we've got the top table there, which assumes no constraints on exit towards the M60 junction 13. So this is something we work closely with the applicant on to simulate the fact that often when on green, heading from Boothstown Centre to junction 13, you join in the back of the queue and it's not free flowing. So that was simulated in this model to see how that would work with that in there. The initial assessment didn't assume that blocking back from junction 13 and gave the results in the top table. Just to quickly run through some of those figures, we've got where my cursor is now, maximum degree of saturation. If that reaches 100, it's at 100% capacity. As you can see, all of those figures there, almost 43%, 37%, 67%. The next column is queuing. It shows a queue, Lee Road east of 7, on Occupation Road 2, and on Lee Road west 13. And there the results for 2031 baseline with development. However, must reiterate that is based on the exit not being blocked. So it shows that the junction would operate perfectly fine in that scenario. We've obviously asked the applicant to simulate the effect of the current queuing, and that gives us the results in the table below. We've got the three approaches again. We've got the maximum degree of saturation again, and we can see that Lee Road West, this is in the AM peak, where the majority of traffic is passing through from Wigan, coming from Boothstown Centre. We'll see that the maximum degree of saturation is actually 100% is exceeded, which would tend to suggest the junction is already operating over capacity. If we then show queues of 112, that would increase, the queue would increase, according to the modelling, to 165 vehicles long in 2031 base scenario without the development. That's just inclusive of natural growth. And you can see the step change there when you add the development in, and there's two with development scenarios here. based on the alternative distributions that I talked about earlier. And we see the queues on Lee Road West increase from 165 to 169, so by 4 vehicles in that scenario, and by 2 vehicles. Again, although it's already operating over capacity, we're here to consider the magnitude of change, and we see that that goes from a minus figure of 42.1% to 42.5 or 42.2. So decimal place deterioration identified at that junction. This larger table is a summary of the results obtained from the assessment of junction 13, the double mini roundabout. Just talking you through the columns again, the first columns are for the 2031 base, so again without the development. The next 3 columns add the development, and then the final 2 columns show the difference between the 2 scenarios. The biggest change forecast is on Lee Road, unsurprisingly, because that's where the development is proposed to be located, and that forecasts an increased delay of 82 seconds as a result of the development, or an increased queue of 35 vehicles. I've just pulled out to the right hand side some of the key points there of the AM results. That's a limited change to delay or queuing on most approaches to the junction or the internal link, Worsley Brow. Most noticeable impact on Lee Road, where the increased queuing of 35 PCUs or vehicles, increased delay of 82 seconds, which would take the delay from a pre-development delay of 574 seconds or 9 minutes 34 seconds to 655 seconds, which equates to 10 minutes 55 seconds. So 14% increase in delay forecast. Slight increases also shown on Walton Road, a delay increase of 10 seconds, and on Barton Lane of 20 seconds. It's an identical table, but with the results populated for the PM peak period. Again, I won't go through the table in too much detail, but I will go through the summary points to the right hand side. Increased queuing reported, and mainly on the M60 off-slip. So quite substantial queuing increases forecast of 64 vehicles on the northbound left-hand head lane, and on the northbound head lane 56 vehicles. On Lee Road, the head lane 52 vehicle increase, and on Barton Road all movements 10 vehicle increase. Corresponding delays, although those increases sound quite large, the existing queues are not significant, and therefore the delays are not huge. So the delays are summarised there in the bullet points. So the M60 off slip northbound left on the head lane, the increased delay is considered to be 56 seconds, so less than a minute, and the head lane 39 seconds, so just over half a minute, with Lee Road experiencing an increase of a minute, and Barton Road just over a minute at 70 seconds.
I thought he was just going to try and justify the new...
Moving away from modelling, just looking at pure figures in these tables here. The table at the top is the AM peak, and we've got 4 rows, each row
M60,
signifies
which will be taking more fields, by the way.
The figures in the first column show the number of vehicles passing through those junctions as per the 2022 observed survey data. With the background growth applied, that shows the PCUs of vehicles that would be considered to pass through that junction in that scenario. It then shows what that increase equates to, and the final column is the expected increase in traffic as a result of the development. And the table below just mirrors the one above, but is for the PM peak. So the background growth between 2022 and 2031 from the DFT's temporal database website is considered to be approximately 10% in both the AM and PM peak. The increases resulting from the development at junction 13 of the M60 equate to between 2.5% and 3.9% in those scenarios. And these increases reported in the line above are based on 2022 flows and not the inflated 2031. In the event that the natural traffic growth doesn't occur and traffic flow stays stagnant, that those figures of 2.2 and 3.9 are very much worst case and based on the current traffic flows. In terms of highways and accessibility improvements, this drawing was submitted, I believe, in transport assessment. Since been reviewed through negotiation, things have been added in and changed. This represents the highways mitigation package. If I could start at, say, 10 o'clock, we've got an improvement scheme for Lee Road, which sees the current uncontrolled crossing of Lee Road, where there's a pedestrian island close to Falconwood Chase. That would be upgraded to a signal crossing, and footways provided in the southern verge where there are none at present, to enhance connectivity for pedestrians from the site to the centre of Boothstown, where the majority of the amenities are located.
Are we getting
along Lee Road to the east, we've got an upgrade of the northern bus stop, the provision of a new bus stop in the southern verge to benefit the occupants of the site. As we move around the site, I'm not sure if you can make out the green dots, but these are intended to identify indicative pedestrian and cycle access locations, so that there's lots of penetration for walking and cycling to, through and from the site, with the main vehicular site access being located here and identified by the purple circle.
Wonder whether we're getting some Viva City Road space usage sensors.
It's intended that the applicant provides a connection from Quayside Close for pedestrians into the site, tying in with the current public rights-of-way which runs north to south through Point Chase. And further to the left of the drawing, we've got further improvements to towpaths and footways to connect into the bridge that takes you over the Bridgewater Canal, provides a valuable amenity for residents on leisurely walks. I won't go through each of these, but this is just a textual representation of what you've just seen graphically. So this is the breadth of the mitigation package that has been offered, and it's on the table from the applicant to support the application and to also mitigate for some of that impact that is recognised from vehicular traffic. This is just a close-up illustration of the proposed crossing on Lee Road in the same location as the pedestrian island at the moment, but as I say, a substantial upgrade to signal control will incorporate cycle facilities also, and you can see on the southern verge the provision of a footway which isn't there at the moment. That's just overgrown with vegetation, as can just about be seen on the aerial photography below, masked by these tree coverage. I think we've just got better indication on this slide. On the left there, currently grass and vegetation. Proposal is to convert that to a footway to really enhance pedestrian connectivity to this site.
What?
So just to summarise the highways position, the site is located according to DFT's connectivity tool in a slightly above average location with respect to accessibility on foot, by bicycle and public transport in the context of the DFT connectivity tool. The assessment of the Lee Road Ellenbrook Road junction showed it to operate at capacity in 2031, regardless of with or without the development, with only a slight deterioration in performance forecast as a result of the development. Lee Road Occupation Road, lengthy queues modelled in the without or with development scenarios, and they were replicating, the model was replicating reality there. As we know, we've all seen that queuing. We were keen to ensure that the model replicated that so that the assessments of the impact could be considered to be accurate. Within capacity in the PM peak with the development traffic added to the AM peak where it's shown to operate over capacity. M60 junction 13 double roundabout, AM peak increased delay of 82 seconds from 574 to 655 seconds, which represents a 14% increase forecast, and that's on the Lee Road arm. PM peak, an increase of around 60 seconds forecast, which is considered minimal in the context of overall journey time. Increases in traffic of between 2.2 and 9% during the peak hours are predicted as a result of the proposed development. So ultimately, we consider there to be no fundamental change in the outcome and conclusions of the modelling when compared with the PFE work which saw this become an allocated site. There's no reason to suggest that the additional traffic would have an adverse impact on highway safety based on the assessment that's been undertaken.
Agenda
An extensive
2030.
mitigation package has been proposed which aims to encourage the use of non-car modes and minimise the number of new car trips added to the network. The local highway authority therefore do not consider to be any substantiating reason to object to the proposal. I'll hand them back over to Adele.
Thank you. If we can just reshare the presentation, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so just to summarise the position, the principle of the development of the site for housing has been established through its removal from the green belt and its allocation within Places for Everyone, which forms part of Salford's statutory development plan alongside the Salford local plan. The application proposes the residential development of the site in accordance with the allocation. The scheme has been reduced in terms of the number of proposed units from 350 originally proposed under the 2023 application to 282 under this current application, and this will ensure the quantum of development can be appropriately accommodated having regard to site constraints and the criteria of its allocation within Places for Everyone. As set out in the report, some minor adverse impacts have been identified with respect to impacts on traffic flow and journey times on the highway network within the vicinity of the site, although this will be partially mitigated by way of the agreed package of mitigation and enhancement works. This is a matter which was also considered in the process of allocating the site for development through Places for Everyone and as part of the consultation that's taken place during the course of this application. All highway stakeholders concur that the residual cumulative impacts of the development would fall below the severe threshold, which is the threshold that must be reached to warrant refusal of an application on highways grounds. Moderate to minor adverse residual effects are also identified with respect to the change to landscape character and visual amenity. This is to an extent expected in relation to development of a greenfield site of this nature, and again is a matter which was considered in the process of allocating the site through Places for Everyone. When developing the site within an urban environment, a degree of harm is expected, and this should be weighed with the positives associated with the development, and in undertaking this balancing exercise, the long-term benefits of the development are considered substantial. Importantly, the development proposals fully accord with the allocation, which established the acceptability of development of the site following a rigorous, comprehensive and independently examined site selection process. The development would make a significant quantitative and qualitative contribution towards high-quality NDSS NM42 compliant housing supply within the city, as well as 50% equivalent affordable housing. It would deliver an area of high-quality public realm, open space, green and blue infrastructure, and 10% net gain for biodiversity, as well as recreation provision, retention of peat in the southern part of the site, and delivery of improvements to older wood through woodland management practices.
You liars!
This is further supported by the package of
biodiversity
interventions and enhancements to improve pedestrian and cycle connectivity, increasing accessibility and further enhancing opportunities for active travel, including improvement works to pavements along Lee Road, bus stops and a signal control crossing to Lee Road. Alongside this, contributions are to be secured in relation to education and health provisions, ensuring that potential impacts arising from the development itself are mitigated. It's considered that the scheme suitably deals with all of the technical and environmental constraints, subject to the mitigation secured by way of the recommended conditions and package of planning obligations. Officers consider that the economic, social and environmental benefits of the scheme outweigh the limited harm identified, and the proposals are considered to represent a sustainable development which complies with the provisions of the development plan when taken as a whole. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set down in the report and the completion of the Section 106 agreement.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stewart. Now, at this point, I'll give the opportunity for the objectors to speak. However, I've been informed that there's a slight sound issue downstairs in the Salford suite. So we're just going to give a couple of minutes for those who are downstairs and unable to hear to be able to join in the public gallery. So that'll just be just a moment or two while that's happening. Now, just while we're waiting for them to arrive, if I could just confirm the speaker orders. I've got Dr. James Smith speaking first. I've got Mr. Alan Kirkman second. I've got Mr. Gary Kenyon Lee speaking third. I've got Mrs. Karen Garrido speaking afterwards.
Oh, brilliant.
Councillor James Fish from Wigan. Councillor Fish, are you speaking in a personal capacity or on behalf of Wigan Council? Okay, thank you very much. And then I've got Miss Kim Law, followed. Miss Kim Law's here. Thank you. And then I've got Mr. and Mrs. Masters in the back. Okay, that's fine. So I'm giving you half an hour between you, and it'll be useful when as you come to speak, to state your name and the capacity, i.e. if you're speaking as a local resident or business owner or whatever capacity you're speaking in. That will give some context to the panel when they hear you speak. So just wait one moment. When you do speak, if you could come forward to this front seat, just right in front of me where the microphone is. Just over here, that's perfect, yeah. And I'd ask if you're able to stand when you're speaking, if you could please do so. If someone has got disability unable to speak, that's obviously fine. If you can stand when you're speaking. And when we're ready to start, if you see there's the two buttons, if you press the right hand button and the red light should come on. So just a moment, I'll tell you when we're ready to go. Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Smith, when you're ready, the right-hand button. We've got in total half an hour, and I'll allow you to manage the time amongst you. I will give a warning at after 25 minutes, and when there's 5 minutes remaining. When you're ready, please begin.
Thank you. My name is Dr. James Smith, a local resident from Boothstown. Members, you have a 951-page document written by me with research from AI, containing more than 150 evidence-backed legal challenges across traffic, public health, ecology, BMG, flooding, utilities, planning integrity, and cumulative harm. They are grounded in the applicant's own planning portal documents. They are not new or minor matters capable of being cured by conditions. Taken together, the evidence shows cumulative and interlocking harm, unresolved uncertainty, mitigation of conflict, and policy non-compliance. This 282 home scheme is not legally sound. You have also received a detailed evidence-led review showing that the planning officer's recommendation is not fit for purpose. It identifies credible grounds of challenge, including failure to consider material considerations, inadequate inquiry, defective EIA reasoning, unsupported factual conclusions, and unlawful reliance on conditions. The officer recommends an approval of a plan that is factually dangerous. Its single-access design could delay emergency vehicles from reaching a house fire. Salford Highway stays in the state of this size with dendritic design, requires a loop-style internal layout and/or safe secondary emergency access. An emergency access backup route shared with pedestrians and cyclists creates a collision risk, including to children. An internal loop does not solve blockage of the sole external entrance. This is an unresolved public safety and site capacity defect. Resolving this would fundamentally alter the wider layout. That requires refusal and a new application, not deferral. The traffic evidence, which you have heard, is also inadequate. The corrected models, these are the documents on the portal, show that Lee Road operating over capacity, with negative practical reserve capacity and no operational resilience.
Good lad.
The final calibrated future baseline without this development reaches 127% saturation, minus 42 practical reserve capacity, with a queue of 165 vehicles PCUs. Strong evidence that conditions would already be severe before the development is added. The 282 home development would then add material queues and delays to an already failing network. There is substantial and credible evidential basis for finding the resulting residual cumulative impacts severe, meaning refusal. The highway's conclusion does not engage adequately with the most failure-sensitive evidence, blocking back, suppressed demand, and queues spreading between linked junctions. You have all that evidence. Once those evidentially unsupported safety, traffic and deliverability conditions are stripped away, what remains? Government-imposed housing targets and the affordable housing contribution. Those are legitimate benefits, but they cannot cure a public safety defect, replace missing evidence, remove severe traffic risk, or make incompatible mitigation measures physically coexist.
And lies about
You have also been given a materially less harmful 160 home alternative, preserving 10 acres west of Shawbrook, together with brownfield alternatives. PFE is not a license to maximise this site. The MPPF requires an appropriate amount of development that functions safely, supports the transport network, and minimises environmental harm. You have been shown that a fundamentally smaller footprint could materially reduce cumulative harm. To approve or defer the larger 282 home footprint without properly confronting the opportunity of the smaller scheme would not minimise avoidable harm. It would maximise development despite it. It would preserve avoidable harm for the sake of greater housing numbers and money. That would conflict with MPPF and would not be a lawful planning balance. On this application, any genuine attempt to avoid and minimise the significant harm identified requires refusal and a fundamentally smaller redesign. If you choose approval or deferral, you are in fact saying, I want the houses, I want the affordable housing contribution, and I am not going to weigh minimising the significant harm despite being offered alternatives, which conflicts with NPPF, which emphasises avoiding and minimising and compensating harm in that order, in particular for biodiversity. That would not be a lawful planning balance. Planning judgment is not immunity from the law. The defects identified mean approval would rely on unsupported assumptions, omitted material considerations, misapplied policy, and unproven mitigation delivered through conditions. Based on the evidence in the challenge document, approval today would proceed on a materially defective factual and legal basis. It would require material errors of fact and unsupported factual assumptions. It would fail to address mandatory and obviously material considerations, would misapply relevant policy tests, and would assume mitigation whose deliverability has not been demonstrated, and rely on conditions or obligations to defer matters that go to the safety, scale, layout, environmental acceptability of the whole development. These are matters that affect whether the conclusions necessary to approve this particular application can rationally be made at all.
Yes.
You have been given all the evidence you need to refuse this application on material grounds. More paperwork through deferral would not protect a single additional acre, remove traffic, restore lost habitat, or cure an unsafe access strategy. Deferral would keep the same 282 home scheme and keep the same cumulative and interlocking harms embedded within, and the fundamental safety, capacity, layout, and environmental defects would remain unresolved. Only refusal and fundamental reduction with a redesign can address them. The correct legal decision is refusal. The evidence provides clear material grounds for refusal. The 282 scheme is dangerous to the public, legally unsafe, and overwhelmingly cumulatively harmful. It should not be deferred, it must be refused. Thank you.
Oh, the battery's going, I'll have to change it.
36 pupils and currently accommodates around 250. Ellenbrook Community Primary School has an official capacity of 435 pupils, but now has approximately 439. That's shows us that they're already over capacity. So the question is simple. Where are the children from these additional housing going to be educated? Our schools are full and some are already educating their limits. Healthcare is facing exactly the same problem. Large medical centre only surgery located directly in Boothstown and serves around 3,500 patients. Residents already struggle to secure appointments, with many morning appointments available throughout the afternoon. If this development goes ahead, where will those additional patients go when there are no other doctors in Boothstown to absorb that demand? Dentistry is an equally difficult position. Boothstown Dental Practice is the only NHS practice in Boothstown again. Serves thousands of patients each year. Is currently unable to accept new adult or child patients, as shown on their website. So once again, where will the growing population be able to receive the healthcare that's needed? Traffic is another major concern. We see that on the documents there, it always talks about Lee Road and Occupation Road. However, as a resident myself, trying to get to Junction 13 on the motorway in the morning, if I'm looking at travelling from the Royal Oak pub on Lee Road towards the motorway from 6:45 a.m. in the morning on a weekday, journeys can take between 20 to 30 minutes to travel just 1.7 miles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Public transport is also insufficient. Buses are frequently delayed because of congestion. There's no tram service, and the nearest train station is Warton, which itself is difficult to access during peak times. While the guided bus services from Ellenbrook provide an alternative, they are not easily accessible for many elderly, disabled or physically challenged residents. Recent developments around Moseley Common, Mort Lane have only worsened congestion, while increased heavy good vehicle traffic linked to the warehouses in Ashley also place even greater pressure on our roads. More housing will inevitably mean more cars, more noise and more pollution, with more businesses now demanding people return full-time 5 days a week into the office after the pandemic. The last survey being completed in 2022 is clearly outdated. This is why the residents demand and deserve a new and updated traffic assessment to be completed not just Tuesday to Thursday, not just 8:30 and 9:30 or 7:30 and 9:30, but 7 days a week, midnight to midnight.
Yes.
To give a full updated surveying figures.
Indeed.
We must also consider affordability. Boothstown was built on a community for working families, miners and rescue workers. Yet many of these proposed homes are expected to cost over £400,000 or more. These properties are simply beyond the reach of many local people and do little to address the urgent need for general affordable housing.
100%.
Finally, there's an impact on our environment and wildlife. Deer and other animals are increasingly being displaced as their habitats disappear. Recent reports of wildlife wandering onto the roads and becoming trapped in the canal, resulting in death, are a visible reminder that continued development comes at a cost to the natural world around us. This is not an objection for progression. This is an objection for development without the schools, healthcare services, transport and infrastructure, affordable housing and environmental protections that our community desperately needs. Boothstown is already under enormous pressure. Until these issues are addressed and the necessary infrastructure is put in place, approving further large-scale housing developments will place an unacceptable burden on residents, public services and the environment. I therefore urge the committee to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirkman. I've got Mr. Kenyon Lee next.
Good morning, Chair, Councillors and panel. I'm here to represent as a resident of Boothstown, and I come with a very simple question for you. What is the straw that's going to break the camel's back to stop approving these developments within this area? there's been a significant positioning this morning around the places for everyone and the reason for actually converting this greenbelt site that has significant archaeological, historical, environmental and ecological value within the area of Boothstown. In fact, the application does not actually meet the places for everyone scope, with actually 40% of the affordable housing not being defined within this development. If Places for Everyone is to build affordable housing for the community and the residents of Salford, then that is what needs to be done, and that is not included in this proposal, it's not being developed on this site. I also want to actually expose you or make you consider Salford's role in the Greater Manchester Combined Authority in Places for Everyone. There is a significant allocation for Places for Everyone bordering Salford between Mosley Common and Tilsley. That site will also access Junction 13 through the exact same arterial routes along Lee Road. Please, no one in this hall be under any misassumption that the images you've been shown today of Lee Road, with next to 0 cars on there, is anything near the reality. My own children travel from Boothstown to Bridgewater School, and on worst occasions it's taken up to an hour to travel from Boothstown to just the other side of Worsley Green. That is the reality of today, and you're citing a highways assessment that was taken in the post-COVID era when the majority of us were still working hybrid in 2022.
Nice
this
one.
application was submitted in 2024, we are now in 2026.
Nice one.
We must reflect on the reality of the traffic
Indeed.
impacted not only by the developments that are already pre-approved within Salford, but the developments that are also getting approved as part of the Places for Everyone in the wider Greater Manchester Combined Authority.
Oh,
We cannot make this
100%
decision
lovely.
in isolation. The pain is felt on a daily basis for the residents of Boothstown, and the impact of that arterial route to Junction 13,
Yes.
as well as losing a significant site of natural beauty. Now, it's not for this panel to decide whether that site should have been reassigned in terms of Places for Everyone, but I think we also need to reflect on the fact that Place for Everyone is having a significant impact on this community, both in and outside of Salford's jurisdiction.
Yes.
I also would like to just raise one point as a committee member of a local grassroots football team that continually is struggling to find access to playing fields and sites to play sport. The suggestion that the playing field at Boothbank Basin is no longer required and adjacent to this site has also been allocated as Place for Everyone and a potential future planning application is not the reality, and I would more than welcome a conversation with the council to reinstate that playing fields, and also for the applicants to actually address the fact or the feedback from Sports England that the development does not address the requirements on a boundary with a playing field. With that, I would like to reflect on whether this should be denied today. I do not agree with this application.
Yes, come on.
Thank you very much,
Suck
Mr.
it
Kenyon.
to
The
ya.
next speaker is Mrs. Garrido. Are you able to come to the front, or would you... You've got a mic there, excellent. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry I can't help myself. Because this is just outrageous.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, members of the panel. I'm here as Karen Garrido, and I'm the chairman of RAID, which I'm sure you all know stands for Residents Against Inappropriate Development. We have been forefront on most of the objections and around Worsley and Boothstown, and this is no exception. This permission for outline of 285 dwellings accessed off occupational road and public open spaces, etc. In accordance to section 70 brackets 2 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 and section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. The planning application should be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Being designated green belt in the development plan, it will be inappropriate development at this time and should only be allowed in very special circumstances. The harm relating to the proposed development and its inappropriateness green belt would be substantial. Definition of harm to greenbelt should and be given substantial weight. Harm to openness of the greenbelt should be given substantial weight as well. There is clear conflict with 2 of the 5 proposals of greenbelt because of the proposed development resulting in urban sprawl and encroachments onto the countryside. This should be given significant weight. The development will lead permanently loss of best and most versatile agricultural land. Limited heritage harm, though, is the Bridgewater Canal, the Ice House and the Bothy. Significant harm to the landscape character resulting from changes to character and visual amenities.
Indeed.
When viewed as a whole, this collective harm should be given substantial weight in their supporting documents. The application states that the benefits of development should outweigh against any harm. The housing benefits of the proposed development. This land is stated in the planning statement is one of the few sites, and this is the wording, capable of developing high-leveled housing rather than social housing. The release of this greenbelt would help to meet the overall housing needs of Greater Manchester, because Salford has reached their housing needs and have still got 8 years left, I think. It might have gone down since I was on the council. We are sacrificing our green belt to attract high earners, not for affordable housing for our residents, as only 20% will be built on site, if at all. We totally disagree with the development. Because it does no help at all to the residents of Boothstown. In brief, any benefits outlined by the developers will only be evident from the pavements. RAID has also been following objections which demonstrate that there are 2 planning applications and consistent with the national planning policy. Public rights of way, common community value. These are all set into the views so that we, as residents, can actually help to provide fields for agricultural and other footpaths. This is not anything to be seen from, and we've had it in the past. I've done 4 high-level applications, and I have to tell you the landscape is exactly the same on all of them, and I should have brought it today, because we've got this open space, brilliant, right? But it's off pavements, it's not the field. You have to view it from the pavement. The children's play area should be within the site of the homes, so that they are visible to residents, not at the end of the site. This site is also home to Alderwood, which provides a serene rural feature with a population of deers. And we all know about the deers getting onto the RHS. And it's highly valued by residents
and murdered
as visitors to the RHS.
By the RHS,
Bridgewater
by the way.
Gardens. Developer says they offer mitigations for these views within the housing layout. Residents are all too familiar with this approach, and what is ultimately delivered is nothing. So I have to say, I now have to go on to, unfortunately, the junction. I'd like to know when those photographs were taken, because I, for one, will actually use the road on that down, because at the moment you can't move. So I don't understand when that photograph was taken. Perhaps if we all know about it, we can actually use that time, because there's no cars on it. But if you go out any other time, right, you're in trouble. And I just think, air and noise pollution, I don't think we've taken that into consideration. That traffic coming along Lee Road is causing so much unhealthy things, right, that we are all breathing in, and these houses are going to be very close to the road, and I think we should be redoing it. The new traffic trial has been done to reduce the heavy queuing. I think the councillors in Boothstown would say that it's not working, and I think the residents in Boothstown would say it's not working. I have to say, living in Worsley, it's not working either, so we need to relook at that. Access will be off one road for the whole of the development. This will be from Occupation Road, close to the junction with Lee Road. This junction is already busy with current traffic levels in and out of the RHS Garden Centre. These visitors are already coming. Last year, I think it was over 1,000 visitors, And I think that we are now, the figure today will be a lot higher because it's a beautiful place and we as local people like to go there.
I don't.
We've heard about the houses in Wigan, and I think the council from Wigan is going to speak. But it all comes down to junction 13. We need to close junction 13 and then there'll be no traffic at all. Send it off the East Lancs Road. And I just feel that, you know, the local, you talk about local school, local transport. I sit on as chairman of the Worsley and Boothstown and Ellenbrook Community Committee. And if we have it once, we have it half a dozen times in a meeting about there being no buses to and from Boothstown, or how do you get to the Lee-guided bus service? And I just feel that we need to be more aware of what the local people want, as well as bringing new people. Everybody likes new people coming into the area, but please, can you think about the residents who live in Boothstown? And I would personally like to ask you, respectfully request, that this application be reviewed.
Thank you. I've got Councillor James Fish from Wigan. There's just under 7 minutes remaining in total, so just bear that in mind, because there are another couple of speakers. Again, it's up to you how you use that time. When you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, and members of the panel. I'm here today as an independent councillor for Tilsley and Mosel Common to speak for thousands of residents who are directly impacted by this application, yet ignored by our administrative boundaries. This application before you proves that our regional planning systems are failing. Over 2,400 formal application objections have been lodged against this scheme. That is not a minor grievance, it's an emergency. To the developer, this site is just a plot of land next to the RHS, but to our communities, this land serves a critical shared buffer. Chipping it away for high-density housing is an insult to the families who rely on our disappearing green spaces. The transport assessment submitted for this project relies on a fantasy land of isolated numbers. It treats these 282 homes as if they exist in a vacuum, but let's look at the reality. Peel's already secured 1,001 houses directly north of Mosel Common, and part of Wigan's own council, Wigan Council's transport assessment for that particular development included 600 minimum houses passing through Lee Road, which is going to have an impact on Boothstown residents. Let's look at the reality of trying to reach the M60 motorway. To travel towards Manchester, these cars use Lee Road. This road is already full. It acts like a virtual car park every single morning and evening. The queues regularly stretch all the way back from the M60 to junction 13 at Worsley. This traps Boothstown, Ellenbrook and my residents in Mosel Common in total gridlock. Junction 13 is a well-known bottleneck that cannot handle the cars it is now doing. It simply cannot take hundreds of extra vehicles from this site. It causes massive delays, blocks access to East Lancashire Road and traps our local bus network in stationary traffic. This makes public transport impossible to rely on. It's a failure of governance to let developers mark their own traffic homework using outdated baseline numbers. Councils must stop prioritising developer targets over the basic quality of life of existing residents. We must demand a strict policy of infrastructure before expansion. If the roads are already failing, the answer to further development must be a firm no. I urge this panel to reject these plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fish. We've still got 4 minutes left. I now have Ms. Kim Law.
I'll be very brief because we've had some very eloquent points put across this morning by the objectors to this application. I speak as a Boothstown resident of 40 years standing and as chair of governors of Boothstown Methodist Primary School. So all those points have been made around those objections on education and health grounds. I would just want to implore and just really ask this committee, this council, to just listen to the views of ordinary people, ordinary families like myself, and not to the views of big business. Please just reject this application. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you very much, Miss Law. I have Mr. Masters.
Oh, she let him speak up.
Thanks. If you could just press the right hand button, please.
Hurry up.
I'm a local resident of Ellenbrook and can't speak like the rest of these people, but the only thing I've got to say is I'm glad I'm retired and don't have to go on Lee Road car park in the morning.
Yeah.
And last year I was held up on the outside lane of the motorway coming to junction 13 to even get on Lee Road, and it took me an hour and a half to reach the turning to get into the RHS.
Yeah.
And the traffic is just terrible.
Yeah.
Round here. We can't afford any more houses and traffic. It's impossible. But the one thing I'm objecting to, I'm really upset about the animal life.
Yeah.
The way that we're getting deer killed on the roads. There's nowhere for them to go. It's just ridiculous. Why can't they build a wildlife centre instead of houses?
Yeah.
They could even pay to go into the wildlife centre. But it's just, to be honest, I think this is going to go ahead anyway, despite what any of us are saying. But I want to know how many people here in this meeting room now actually use Lee Road. All these people who've done the surveys, how many actually use Lee Road? Can anybody answer me?
None of you then. Good lad.
I'm happy for you to speak, but we can't have an interactive discussion.
Oh dear, no.
Carry on with your
That
question.
wouldn't be
Well,
good.
I just think we can't afford any more houses than cars. And that's it.
Good lad.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Oh, do
Masters.
we
We
have a
still
little bit of
have 2 minutes
I'm
left.
just gonna check
Mrs. Masters, if you wish to speak.
That there's no rolls of ours then. Watch that back. Thought I noticed an eye roll there, people, but let's see. Maybe I was wrong.
Sorry, take your time.
Oh. Good girl. Go on.
What button was pressed?
The button's pressed.
And my husband, Peter Masters, we've lived there for 30 years now. Many years ago, I used to work. It took me an hour and a half to get to work in Salford from Lee Road.
So always
now I'm more concerned. I'm 82. My life is going to be over. We've got children on my estate that can't get in Ellenbrook school. They have to go one, the other, and it's not fair. We can't afford any more houses. I've come from a 2 and 2 down as a kid. I know what it's like to want to live in a nice home and a nice area. It's took me all these years to get there, and these kids cannot get schooling. They're travelling all over. The mum and dads are working. I took my 2 grandchildren all my life to school, and it's not fair. I want people to have homes, and I do. I can't stand people having no home, no kids to play with. They've got no life, but they can't afford to have Lee Road. It's a death trap, like my husband said. And when I worked, it took me an hour and a half. I had to go to Prestwich once, to Muir Road, to come to get to Trafford. And now, we've got that many cars on the road, and Peel Holding has wanted this land for years.
Absolutely. Good
for years
girl.
and years.
Yes.
And they don't need it, and they don't deserve it.
No, they do
I'm not a speaker. I'm speaking from the heart. Inside I'm trembling. I'm upset that our council now is going to give this land away to people who want houses. When they say accessible houses, they're not on Lee Road. Going to be little houses like I was brought up, 2 up and 2 down.
They're not accessible for locals.
They'll have nice homes. So you can't say...
Mrs. Master, if you could wrap up now, we're out of time.
Millionaires roll, True that though. Oh, she's going out though at least. What a shame.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate we've been in the room quite a while without a break, so we're going to take a 15-minute adjournment now before we hear from the applicants.
Let's see.
Yeah. So if I could ask that panel members, if they want to leave the chamber, can please do so. If I could ask other members of the public at this point to remain in the chamber, and once panel members have left, officers will direct you to facilities if you want to use those.
Are you frightened of being lamped by them? Do we have to keep separate?
At 12 p.m.
Right, bye for now. Don't make any noise now, please. You can, but don't talk.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Planning Panel this afternoon. And thank you very much for the speakers who have already spoken. At this point, we move on to the hearing from the applicant or the applicant's agent. I believe we've got two registered speakers, Annabelle Baker and Olivia Carr. Are you present? Okay. You've got half an hour between you. Would you like 15 minutes each, or would you like... Sorry? Right, okay, fine. So you've got half an hour between you. You just come to that microphone. When you're ready, if you press the right-hand button, and you can start when you're ready. If you don't mind standing when you speak, is that possible? Thank you.
Hello, Chair and Councillors. I'm Annabelle Baker from Peel Land. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about this application. As you're aware, Peel is a long-term investor and key delivery partner in Salford. We see the delivery of much-needed family and affordable homes as an important part of our contribution to the city, which complements regeneration at the Quays, Media City, and partnerships such as RHS Bridgewater and the Bridgewater Canal. We've worked with the Council and stakeholders for 4 years on the detail of the proposals before you, to bring forward this flagship scheme, which provides a rare opportunity to provide both exceptional quality family homes and 50% affordable housing. The land east of Boothstown was identified in the Places for Everyone plan as a rare site in Greater Manchester that is capable of delivering around 300 homes to the top end of the housing market, but that could also unlock significant affordable housing. This led to its removal from the Greenbelt and allocation for housing. The principle of development is established, and we've worked hard to ensure the details are right and all technical matters have been resolved with the council officers and statutory consultees. The delivery of attractive market homes to this site will play a key role in retaining and attracting talent to support Salford's economy, in line with the council's wider objectives. It will strengthen the city's profile as an attractive place to live through a flagship development of exceptional quality. The new homes will be set within a lush landscaped environment, reflecting the site's adjacency to RHS Bridgewater. They'll include a swathe of open parkland next to the Bridgewater Canal, with 2 green corridors running north-south and a footpath and cycle links connecting the site to schools, Boothstown and local services. A children's play park will provide a focal point for the community. All of these amenities will be accessible to the wider community, whereas the site is currently private farmland with restricted access to a couple of footpaths. The proposals also include an extremely comprehensive package of benefits, which will be secured through planning conditions and Section 106, and I'll touch on some of those now. We're all aware that Salford has a housing crisis, and there's an urgent need for more affordable homes to tackle the growing housing waiting list, and the associated impact on the cost of living and the quality of life faced by local people as a consequence. I'm not saying this development can single-handedly solve these problems, but but it will have a significant impact. East Boothstown can deliver up to 28 affordable homes on site, but importantly, it offers the rare opportunity to also generate a substantial financial contribution to allow for a further 113 affordable homes to be built elsewhere in Salford. This provides a significant boost towards affordable housing delivery in the city. It equates to a total of 141 affordable homes provided by the development overall, providing homes for those on Salford's housing waiting list. The ability to deliver 50% affordable housing is a huge benefit of this scheme. We recognise local concerns about traffic and local services, and so we've been working closely with officers and stakeholders over the past 4 years to agree a package of transport measures to improve walking routes and promote public transport use. This includes improving footpaths along the Bridgewater Canal and Boothstown Bridge. The proposals also include substantial contributions to improve local health services and to meet the need for school places arising from those new residents. The proposals before you represent a policy-compliant scheme on an allocated site that will deliver a truly exceptional development. It's a result of significant engagement with stakeholders across a number of years and can immediately deliver an extensive package of benefits. We therefore ask you to support the officer's recommendation to approve the application. Thank you for your time.
No one clapped.
Thank you, and I believe we have Ms. Carr speaking.
Can you imagine?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. I am Olivia Carr, a Director at Turley, acting as Planning Consultant on behalf of Peel Land. I would firstly like to acknowledge the Comprehensive Officer's Report. A huge amount of work has been undertaken over several years involving multiple iterations and changes to get this scheme right. It now carries the support of your officers, who of course know the scrutiny it will face and would not have put forward such a comprehensive report if they did not strongly believe the proposal should now be approved. I will therefore only seek to summarise a few key points. As we've heard, this site has been identified as a draft allocation since the first draft of the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework in 2016 and at all stages thereafter. This followed numerous rounds of public consultation and several approvals by full council. Substantial evidence was produced during the plan-making process to demonstrate that, due to housing need and the shortage of land within the existing urban areas of Greater Manchester, exceptional circumstances exist to justify the removal of land from the Green Belt to meet housing and development needs. Following the adoption of Places for Everyone in March 2024, this site is no longer within the Green Belt and is allocated for residential development for around 300 new homes. One of the key reasons for allocating the site was that it was one of few that could contribute to a wider mix of houses in Salford, and in particular has the ability to make a significant contribution to both the supply of family and affordable housing. We have worked with the Council and statutory consultees for over 4 years to shape the proposal before you today. Through ongoing engagement with officers, the scheme has been changed to respond to the requirements of the allocation policy and the issues identified through the planning process, with a clear focus on ensuring that this important site delivers a development of exceptional quality and major benefit. The proposals meet all of the requirements of the allocation policy for the site, including the provision of up to 282 new homes and policy-compliant 50% affordable housing through a mix of on-site and off-site contributions. It achieves a high-quality design which is established through a master plan document and design code for the site. And as we've heard, the scheme is acceptable in transport and highways terms, as detailed by Mr Clements earlier, and also confirmed by an independent consultant, National Highways and Transport for Greater Manchester. The proposals also include a package of works to improve pedestrian, cycle and public transport connectivity. The scheme will provide a significant level of high-quality public open space, recreational provision and 10% net gain in biodiversity, including through the protection and enhancement of existing habitats on site, such as the retention of peat in the southern area.
Well, we're destroying
financial contributions will also be provided towards outdoor and indoor sports, allotments, primary care facilities and primary and secondary education. As confirmed in your officer's report, the proposals respond positively to the strategic objectives and general housing policies of the adopted development plan. It is compliant with all other relevant policies within the development plan, including the residential allocation. and importantly, the proposals contribute to housing supply generally, and in the context of the national housing crisis and the national planning policy framework, it's imperative to boost significantly the supply of housing. As per your officer's report, the proposals represent sustainable development when considered against the requirements of the framework as a whole. The application must be determined in line with the plan-led system. This site is allocated and went through the substantial scrutiny as part of this process. The principle of the residential development of the site is therefore already accepted, and the application fully complies with the requirements of the site's allocation. This has been confirmed by your officers and a wide range of statutory consultees involved with it over the last few years. Due process has been followed stringently and no technical matters remain unresolved. Where a policy compliant scheme on an allocated site is advanced, national planning policy is clear. The presumption in favour of sustainable development applies and applications should be approved without delay. I therefore hope that you are able to support your officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Many thanks, Ms. Khan, and thank you for keeping it brief. At this point, we come on to Councillor Ward. You have 5 minutes to speak when you're ready. I think you know how to use the microphone, I believe. Thank you. You've got 5 minutes when you're ready.
Okay, ready. So 2,617 residents objection. Chair committee members, thank you, and residents, thank you. I am here today to deliver a definitive, legally grounded case for the outright refusal of planning application. Let me be entirely clear, we are not here to re-litigate the Places for Everyone master plan, nor do we challenge the allocation of this land. Our objection targets a far more critical hurdle. The absolute fail of this specific overdense layout to demonstrate physical deliverability and capacity. Under section 38.6 of the Planning Act, the strategic allocation is never a blank cheque for an unsustainable development plan. The applicant has presented this scheme as a series of isolated, artificial technical boxes to be checked, operated under the false premise that fundamental spatial conflicts can simply be conditioned away. Planning law strictly prohibits atomised assessments. You have a statutory duty to evaluate this application in the whole. Examine the holistic cumulative impact today. The physical constraints of this site means that necessary mitigations cannot safely coexist. This layout is legally undeliverable and must be refused. To see why this layout is not compliant, look directly to the open space audit. The developer has relied on the impossible quadruple counting of land parcels to artificially inflate what can fit on this site. They are claiming the exact same narrow strips of green infrastructure to simultaneously satisfy four completely conflicting planning requirements: usable public open space, high volume drainage basins, major utility easements, and electrical buffers of protected species. This creates inconsistent spatial double bind. Children cannot play safely inside an active flooded drainage basin. You cannot legally plant deep-rooted woodland buffers directly on top of high-pressure utility easement tracks. Crucially, this site forms a vital ecological corridor for protected wildlife, specifically feeding and foraging bat species, which is protected.
Yes.
The applicant claims wildlife protection can be managed by future conditions, but the physical layout proves otherwise. Introducing artificial street lighting, hard pavement networks and urban disturbance into these exact same double-counted green strips permanently severe the dark corridors these protected bats rely on to survive.
Yes.
National policy dictates that you must resolve layout compatibility and wildlife protection before granting permission, not to fear structural environment harm. This artificial layout forces an unsuitable volume of housing into an area where basic public infrastructure has already collapsed. Our local GP surgeries and primary healthcare services are severely overstretched. Worse, are currently zero NHS dentist places available within the local area, forcing hundreds of new families onto an entirely non-existent medical dental list with dangerous compromised healthcare access and spike already waiting times for existing residents. Local schools are at absolute capacity. The applicant cannot buy their way out of this crisis with a financial contribution where there is no physical school space or geographical route for expansion.
And we don't want prisons either.
Area. Furthermore, this site features a total lack of amenities, offering no everyday service without walking distance, forcing children to overcrowded classrooms and forcing parents to travel miles out the area for basic needs completely violates the core tenets of sustainable development. Because local services are completely absent in accessible foot, the specific layout forces absolute car dependency. This development will inject massive and sustainable pressure directly already on a broken strategic highway network. Every single major artery road in the sector, Chatham Road, Elbert Road, Newark Road, Moseley Common Road, Barton Road, Worsley Road and Wartling Road, all not just in Boothstown, this is in the whole area. It's hitting junction 13 on the M60. The junction is already severely over capacity. The traffic light system fitted onto junction 13 roundabout has been an absolute demonstrable failure.
Yes.
That's causing catastrophic long-tail peak hour gridlock that backs up heavily in Wartling, Little Wilton, Tilsley, Swinton and Worsley. Crucially, the applicant highway modelling is fundamentally flawed because it completely ignores cross-border cumulative impact. It fails to account for thousands of homes recently built on the border with Wigan, alongside the massive volumes of houses Salford has already granted in Broadoak, Fulton and Wartling. The applicant air quality assessment is legally non-compliant and relies on a smooth annual averages on a spreadsheet, completely ignoring Salford's plan, policy PH1, and the MPPF paragraph 198, which mandate a strict assessment of cumulative exposure to traffic with what concentrates toxic fine particles, as that where our children walk to school actively worsening declared air quality. Members, a token 10% affordable housing allocation for high-end market housing does not outweigh the permanent, irreversible, destructive or restored peat and high-value carbon sinks, protecting wildlife habitats and local health. Proceedings with an approval today directly exposes the council to immediate use of review.
20 seconds left.
This statement officially serves actual notice to every voting member of this committee.
Yes.
The evidence-based risk in all these facts. Now that they're formally before you, creating an undeniable evidential record, conscious disregard, this triggers a direct breach of the statutory duties under Section 70 of the Planning Act and Section 149 of the Quenty Act. The physical mitigation cannot fit within this scheme. Protect our community, uphold your statutory legal duties, and refuse its application in its whole. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you were nodding. Nice one.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ward. I now have Mr. Michael Wheeler, MP.
Michael Weaver, this is the guy people keep saying. White Wheeler, this is the guy people keep asking me to speak with, but let's see.
Chair and members of the planning panel, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of my constituents today. I am here to urge you to reject this planning application. This proposal is overwhelmingly opposed by local residents, with only 0.8% of public comments being supportive. They are worried about what this means for the place they call home. Firstly, I am worried about the impact that this will have on our roads. I frequently receive complaints from residents who experience daily delays and serious congestion on Lee Road, the A580, Worsley Road and around Junction 13. The report accepts there are delays and queuing during peak periods, particularly during the morning peak. And this reflects my constituents' experiences, and I'm sure that you will recognise them too. We cannot keep pouring more vehicles onto our congested local network. It is not appropriate to approve this development without first delivering genuine improvements to the roads. Secondly, this proposal fails to contribute to the demonstrated need for affordable housing in the Boothstown area. The report states that demand for advertised properties is significantly above the Salford average, and Places for Everyone requires developments of this nature to provide 50% affordable housing. Yet this application proposes a split of 10% on-site with a financial contribution towards the provision of an equivalent of 40% off-site. In reality, it's just 9.9% that is proposed on-site, and I would suggest that the failure to even hit the reduced 10%, to not provide the one additional property that would have tipped that number over 10%, is indicative of the underlying approach to this development, profit ahead of the needs of the local community. I recognise in the report that deviating from the 50% provision is, and I quote, considered appropriate when taking account of the site location and ambition to provide housing of exceptional quality, primarily targeting the top end of the housing market, and the desire to ensure delivery of a mixed and sustainable community on site. I would politely suggest that it would be possible to satisfy the requirement for a development that primarily targets the top end of the housing market by altering the 50% requirement to just 49%. Every percentage point reduction after that is a choice, and moving 40% of the provision off-site does absolutely nothing to deliver a mixed and sustainable community on-site. Affordable housing does not provide genuine local benefit if it is separated from the development and delivered elsewhere. I therefore disagree with the assessment that the proposal is compliant with policy H4 and places for everyone. Thirdly, this development would place significant additional pressure on local public services. It consists largely of family homes, yet primary schools in the area are already oversubscribed. Boothstown Methodist, Ellenbrook Community, St Andrews and St Mark's all receive substantially more applications than available places. The same pressures exist across GP surgeries, dental practices and other local amenities, with GP surgeries already over the GM average of patients per GP by 200 per GP. This application does not provide sufficient reassurance that the necessary infrastructure will be in place to support the additional population and avoid adverse impact on existing residents. Finally, this proposal causes lasting harm to the environment. On a site which acts as a green lung for our community, providing a home for species including bats, deer, foxes and badgers, I have major concerns about the lack of a plan to achieve the requirement for biodiversity net gain and that plan could be met. The report in front of you acknowledges that development will result in biodiversity losses and calls for an off-site habitat creation and enhancement, details of which should be provided to you before the application is decided.
It might be an
Yet no site is identified, and the requirement under local plan policy BG2 has not therefore been met.
Oh, wonderful.
Councillors,
yes,
when you consider the planning balance and conclusion section of the report you are considering, the concerns I and others have raised fundamentally alter that balance. As I have laid out, I do not believe that the assessment presented to you has justified such a severe deviation from policy H4, and therefore believe that the application is non-compliant. When you combine this with the acknowledged adverse impacts across a range of factors, such as traffic flow, journey times, landscape character and visual amenity, the balance shifts significantly against approval. Because of this, I strongly urge each of you to reject it today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wheeler. At this point in the proceedings, we now turn to the panel discussion. During the panel discussion, there will be no further input from members of the public, unless a question is raised by a member of the panel through myself as chair, and I determine that it would be appropriate for the question to be answered. Otherwise, there will be no further input from members of the public.
No.
Before I turn to comments and questions from members of the public, just want to get some legal clarification from the solicitor as to whether school provision is a material planning issue, and also the doctors and dentists and the alleged lack of them, whether that's also a material planning ground. So if I can get that legal clarification on both the
I'll just refer to my solicitor sat at the side of me.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, those issues are material planning considerations. They are covered in the report and the update report. I think if any more detail on those provisions is required, it's probably better direct to the planning officers, but they are material considerations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Irving. And just to check with the officers, the photograph of the junction, can we just get confirmation of when that was actually taken, just for clarification?
So there's a number of photos obviously within the presentation, some of which were taken earlier on during the course of the application when site notices were put up. The most recent ones were taken earlier this week at about 1 o'clock on the Tuesday afternoon.
Thank you very much. I now open up to panel discussion. Members wish to speak. Councillor Grogan, please.
This week.
Wonderful, thank you, Chair. Listening to it intently to everyone who spoke today, and much like everyone else, I'm not going to relitigate the allocation in places for everyone. But I am broadly supportive of more housing developments in the city instead of funding them all in the city centre of Salford. So I am broadly supportive of this application, but there are some minor issues that I have with it. First of all, the allocation 25, the wording in it is very clear about some off-site affordable housing provision. I don't think the 40% off-site versus 10 on-site really meets that requirement in the allocation. I think that sort of takes a lot of the benefits out of the affordable housing allocation. That we're sort of segregating communities based on affordable housing versus what they're calling luxury, high quality housing. Really takes a lot of that benefit out of the affordable housing, I would say, out of the application. So I'm not sure whether it meets the requirements for that. And then also traffic. I'm not going to go against the statutory consultee responses on traffic and make a judgment on whether the impact of this development would be severe or not.
Put his hands in his trousers because he knows he's doing wrong.
I think there's a real question around whether a habitats regulation assessment should have been conducted in line with the Manchester Mosses SAC. I think the threshold for the trigger is 100 cars and we're at 96. I don't know whether that takes into account the cumulative impact of the other committed sites at Hazelhurst Farm and Mostly Common. My understanding, my judgment would be that a habitats regulation assessment should have been conducted. I'm not sure whether that has taken place. So they're my two real main concerns at this stage, other than the fact that I'm broadly supportive. But if we can get an answer to that, then I'll come back in later. Thank you.
Well, I can't look at you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Grogan. I'm going to ask Mr. Shuttleworth just to give some advice regarding the affordable housing in places for everyone and how it works.
Touched his mouth too when he sat down.
Can everyone hear? Thank you very much, Chair. So both the allocations in places for everyone have a policy which says some of the affordable housing can be provided off-site. There's a recognition that the sites in Hazelhurst Farm and east of Boothstown are appealing to a sort of high market offer, and there is a tension between that and providing 50% affordable housing on site. Recognise east of Boothstown is particularly attractive in a market sense, and so officers' assessment was there was justification to look at a split that looked at more of the meeting that requirement off-site. We would consider that the 10-40 split does meet policy, and policy recognises there is that tension.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shuttlesworth. And can I just go to Mr. Clements, just for clarification on Councillor Grogan's question regarding the traffic?
Sure, thanks, Chair. In terms of cumulative impact, that's not required because this isn't a capacity assessment, it's more a trigger. It just looks at the impact of this development and whether that would generate more than 100 vehicles per day, thus triggering further assessment. It's found to not. Obviously, the applicant had to extend their sphere of consideration, let's say, because the network was much more condensed than we were testing. So we went back to the applicant and asked them to look at the M62 impacts and extended the distribution to look at the number of vehicles that would be likely to pass through there over a 24-hour period.
Mark Carpenter.
They pointed out that was under the 100 vehicle threshold, so no further assessment needed.
Thank you. Councillor Grogan, did you want to come back on that?
I think he was great.
I disagree with James about the policy wording. I think allocation 25 in that specific bit, it's not a generalist wording about some off-site provision. Actually, in allocation 25, I would imagine it's pre-considered to
You would imagine, or you know.
This site. And with its requirement to in allocation 25 for PFE. It's specifically about this site, not just the generalist wording. I would disagree that we're meeting the policy for that. And then also, understand we're just under the cusp. I think under the cusp was the wording used in the report. 96 out compared to 100. I think that is it's obviously a binary trigger, but agree with what you said about it not meeting that trigger. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Grogan. Mr. Shuttleworth, is there anything you wanted to come back on that?
Only quickly, I'm not sure what the generalised point I made was. I mean, there are only two sites, to my knowledge, in Greater Manchester that will achieve 50% affordable housing at all. When the policy was prepared, obviously this was well in advance of any detailed schemes being prepared or considering some of the design issues. Some is a level, determining what the sum was. I think our assessment is a 10-40 split on this side is reasonable. I wasn't thought the general point I made was there's certainly no general points across on the site. These are two quite specific sites and quite distinct in each of its characteristics.
I'm afraid the policy doesn't define some more than the word some, which I suppose doesn't go to gradations of the whole, minorities, majorities, or it's some, and that's what the council, the panel will have to consider as an issue, whether 40% offsite is 10% onsite is some. There's no, obviously the previous site we considered the PPL allocation was 20%, 30% offsite, so that was their starting point. I think there were reasons for this site to consider a different proportion. It is something that the panel will have to consider in its deliberations.
She's giving a legal interpretation. I'm just...
So the policy sets out that some could be provided off-site. It doesn't set out what proportion some is. That's obviously a planning judgment. As officers have assessed consider the proposed split to be reasonable, it's something for the panel to consider with it as part of their deliberations.
Thanks. And just confirming from a legal point of view whether the word some refers any more than its normal English definition, and whether again some can be anything from 1% to 99%, whether there's any legal definition or whether it's a panel decision.
Thanks, Chair. There's no legal definition of some in this context that's not defined in the policy, so you would fall back on the alternate dictionary definition. If it assists, I've quickly checked the dictionary definition online, and it says it is an unspecified amount or number of.
Thank you very much, Mr. Irving. Okay, so we have now the legal ruling. Councillor Clark, and again, other members are also entitled to participate.
Now, I should point out that the legal the dictionary definition of the word some is an unknown or
Thank you very much. Okay. Through the chair, please. Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Right, so the big one, the traffic. Could Highways explain why in one of the documents it says the data sources lack the granularity of direct on-site surveys? So could you explain to me how the traffic data has been obtained? Because most of the document references Google traffic data, which is highly inaccurate. Because if you have people whose privacy settings are so set, cars aren't counted in queue lengths. I would also like to know why the queue measurements have stopped at Ellenbrook Road when daily it backs up towards the post office at Simpson Grove. So it's highly inaccurate. I think the whole assessment, when you read it, is flawed. But if we are relying solely on Google traffic data, I don't think that's adequate, and that would be a reason to reject this, because the traffic is completely flawed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. Mr. Clements, can you give an answer to Councillor Clark's question, specifically the point as to whether or not what other information was used for information gathering other than Google, and whether or not how reliable Google is in light of the fact of Councillor Clark's question that potentially people can disable their settings? Got some comment there, please.
Thanks, Chair. To attempt to answer the question, the data has been gathered from a number of different sources. So the survey data was carried out by an independent traffic survey company on behalf of the applicant. So that would have been the turning counts and the link flow data that you see before you. The growth rates obtained from DFT's website is a recognised method of growth in upflows for future years. The Google traffic has been used. That was to determine queue lengths. There was no queue length survey observations taken on site, so that's an alternative method of understanding the length of the queues. So that was used in order to validate, calibrate and adjust the models to suit and replicate reality. And TomTom data has been used to supplement the assessment data from a point of view of journey times and delay. So it's quite a wide range of source for the data that's been used, because it's quite a comprehensive assessment that's been undertaken. So hopefully that explains why it's from a number of different sources.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levens. Councillor Clark, do you want to come back on that point?
So I was saying that no physical cues were measured. It's all Google data, which is highly inaccurate. I work on the motorways. I know how inaccurate it is. So that is just not reality. The reality of the situation on Lee Road, as a lot of us know who use it, it's backed up from 6:45 every morning down to the post office. None of the screenshots within the technical documents show that queue length. So I don't know how that happened, but you can sit on Lee Road and you can look at your maps and you can see you're sitting in a clear road and everything's there. So it's not accurate. The traffic assessment is fundamentally flawed. How have we clarified that their data is correct? Because if we're just using Google Maps to do it, that does not replace going out and actually measuring the queues. I don't think that's a sound way of monitoring the traffic, so that's not good enough.
Thank you very much.
Forget about your Viva City cameras on, mate. That's what you've got to recommend.
To what was said before, and I to Councillor Clark's further comments.
Just to add, it's not sole reliance on Google traffic data. On-site observations have been made by both the applicant and myself. We are aware that the queues are lengthy. They are replicated. I'm just looking at the panel report now, and we're reporting queues in the 2002 observed assessment of 112 vehicles, which equates to about 700 metres worth of queuing. So it's not that the modelling doesn't recognise that there's queuing or that the junctions work. I think we're working on the basis that everybody accepts the network is congested. The requirement of MPPF and our own local policy is to look at the magnitude of change beyond that to determine the application. I think we all accept that there's queues and congestion, and that's what the model replicates.
But you mean your active travel?
Councillor Doyle, you indicated.
That's what you mean?
Thank you, Chair. I've used Lee Road for about 20 years now, and in that time it has gone so bad with traffic, so bad. I do a 6-minute journey from Boothstown to my place of work.
Traitor, isn't he?
That's on a Sunday morning when there's no traffic. During the week, it takes me an hour. So traffic, you know, like the models you use, is not realistic.
His face.
They're just not realistic at all. You'd have to go out, get in the car and start to drive, and then see how bad the thing is. I've heard Dr. Smith, the councillors, the MPs. I've listened to all these people and passionate about the illegalities of the thing, everything like that. So basically, alone on the traffic, I would have to reject it. Thank you.
Oh, look at him.
Thank you very much,
Mr. Pro Development.
Can we just get some clarification from office? Obviously, I don't think there's a dispute as to the current traffic situation, but from a material planning grounds, can we get some clarification? Obviously, it's only if the situation is made materially worse. So can we just get the exact definition of what would be what material planning grounds we're talking about? Because again, we're not discussing, or we are discussing, but the fact that there's current traffic problems are not in dispute. It's the question of whether this application will make it significantly worse. So can I just get some clarification as to what exact issue is relevant from a traffic point of view? Ms. Stewart, or is that Mr. Stevenson?
Yeah, could we just share the presentation again, please? Let's bring it on my screen. I mean, traffic's clearly a material planning consideration, and as has been set out by Mark on this one, the policy test that has to be applied is whether the impact of this development is severe. Because we've heard quite a lot of discussion from various people in the room today about the existing conditions on there. And those existing conditions are not what is under consideration by panel members today. It is what the impact of this development would have. And you know, as we've seen from the presentation and the language used in the officer's report, it's been best described as negligible or minimal. So from the professional officer's viewpoint, and it's not just the local highway authority, it's Transport for Greater Manchester, Active Travel England, Highways England, a collection of experts in this area support that position. So from my point of view, it is material, but it's some way off that severe test.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stevenson. Councillor Clark, again, thank you.
Right, you just mentioned safety. So have we done a safety audit to see how driver frustration and poor queue gaps caused by the delays will affect safety? And how do you equate for a 200 metre extra queue length on the arterial roads on Lee Road? And you didn't answer the question why the survey doesn't go beyond Ellenbrook Road down to Falconwood, onto Stansfield Drive and Lee Road, because the queues go back further. You've only decided to go to Ellenbrook Road, but there's a whole section of road that is stationary. You also haven't taken into account the adverse effects on the Ellenbrook Junction or the Mossley Common Junction. The extra capacity, lack capacity on Barnton Road, Walkden Road and Worsley Road, the whole area is gridlocked. It's famous for being gridlocked, and yet we are in a rotten rye on people who do no factual evidence. They don't sit in that shop and they say it's okay. We've got to stop it. I've been on this panel 11 years now, and every time we've approved
supposed to be live watch, and they blanked him out.
All okay, because when I moved here 20 odd years ago, I used to be able to leave my house.
Clark, is this? Somebody told me that he said he was
4 or 5 times over the past year that it's coming to breakneck point where people are moving out the area because they can't get to school. We can't just keep on approving
somebody told me that he didn't defend Worsley after he said he would. But I don't know whether that's true or not.
It's not their job. It's our job to provide the infrastructure to support housing. There is no meaningful highways improvements in this scheme except a couple of pavements and a crossing. It doesn't get to the crux of the matter that people need their cars. Firstly,
she's local as well,
right,
and I've got them on camera. They don't mind being said I asked them.
It's nowhere comparable to that site. First of all, you haven't counted all the houses on Boothstown Drive because there's roads off it, so you're out by 9 houses. Boothstown Drive isn't signalised, so that's not even a comparison. It turns left onto Boothhall Way, up to the top. That's not signalised. That is not a fair comparison to this site. It's fundamentally flawed, and we need to do better, and we need to be more robust to ensure that the residents can get to work, get to school, and have a life. It's not about the residents coming in. It's about keeping the residents happy and safe where they already are. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. Yeah, just get further comment from traffic as to which. One of the Councillor Clark's point was that the traffic didn't extend into Ellenbrook Road. So can we just get some clarification as to which is the reason why the particular area was chosen, and the rationale as to why it wasn't expanded, and whether there's relevance to potential impact in the wider area that a survey hasn't been done on. If I can get that from Mr. Clements, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think the reference to the data only extending back to Ellenbrook Road relates to the TomTom data, which links to the journey time and the delay calculations. In terms of considering that the queue goes much further back than that, we did do that, but not with the TomTom data because that was for a different purpose. So the Google traffic data was used to interpret the queue length to inform the model for Occupation Road, Lee Road. So I think you're just looking at 2 different sets of data and assuming one doesn't cover the other purpose, but it's 2 different sets of data. The Google traffic information looks at that queue and considers the length, and then we manipulated, their consultants manipulated the model to reflect the queue length shown in Google traffic, and that was taking the queue back to where it was shown in Google traffic, which was much further beyond Ellenbrook Road. That's Boothstown Drive. You also mentioned Councillor Clark.
again agreed with the applicant that was a suitable donor site to survey to give us an indication of traffic flows in the peak hour from houses, dwellings in that area. The fact that it's got signals or not got signals is irrelevant. It's just counting the number of people that get up and get in their car and leave between the peak times. The form of access junction isn't really relevant. When we say we assess Boothstown Drive, you made a valid point that there's another 3 cul-de-sacs off Boothstown Drive. They were also included in the assessment. It was the junction of Boothstown Drive where they all converge. So it did include all properties, of which there are 69.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clements, and I believe Councillor Clark wishes to come back on that.
Order this from your voice eventually. Right, I'll go back to Boothstown Drive. At least 30% of Boothstown Drive are probably retired.
The
majority will walk their children to St Andrews because it absolutely is in walking distance. So it's a flawed
I trust the people who told me
it bears no resemblance to what we're going to presenting to be built.
Let's see.
Because if these are high value houses
to find out
with
whether
like 4 or 5 bedrooms, they're going to be multiple people going to work and taking the kids to school. Not when 30% are retired and the rest of them probably walking all the kids to school because it's within a stone's throw of St Andrew. It's not comparable, it's flawed. Manipulation, you said you manipulated to get figures, but that you know, I work with computers. If you put something into a computer to get it out, you give it the data that you want to get out. So you can manipulate figures to get the result. Yeah. But the true fact of the matter is nobody can move in Boothstown. And you can't deny that. You can look at spreadsheets and tables, but it doesn't reflect the reality of the situation. It's gridlocked. It's one of the worst roads in the country for hold-ups. And we're fudging it. This is a fudge. It's not credible. And we need to look at this again. The whole survey, and going back to 2022, most people working from home. It's not relevant. We've got to do better. So it's not, honestly, it's not good enough. It's fundamentally flawed and it needs doing again.
What? Thought it were live.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. I think you've...
No, it's not live then, is it? They keep lowering
Councillor McCaskill, please.
Sound when they want.
And
that little bad-tempered little sod. Where is it, Grogan?
That we've got, we believe that highways operate.
Through the chair, please, Mr. Councillor.
I believe it's a highly offensive comment to make. We rely on the professionalism and expertise of our officers and other consultees to say that they are manipulating data in order to get the answer that they want. I find that highly offensive.
Oh, do you? What a shame. I found it highly offensive what you want to do to that green land and all them animals.
Explanation that's through
personally.
That was the problem. We've had.
Is that the emotional vote?
And this goes across a whole lot of things.
And we're so upset.
We've had 957-page documents produced by AI and delivered to us in our boxes.
By AI? What you're encouraging everybody to use?
Officers, when they're making a judgment, we have to rely on what statutory consultees come back and say.
Oh.
Basically, this land was taken out of the green belt through Places for Everyone to serve a purpose to Greater Manchester, as we developed, to produce an area where you could have aspirational houses in a site that would take it. No one disagrees that Lee Road is a nightmare. Lee Road is a nightmare. Everyone in this room, everyone behind me knows that. What we're judging here, and what we've been asked to judge on, is whether or not the difference between Lee Road as it is now, Lee Road with that development on, is the difference between those two now severe? Now the data is saying that is not severe. It's obviously going to add cars onto the network, but it doesn't hit the threshold that the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework, has for us to decide that that is then material. So,
what about your biodiversity data?
It's going to add to it, but it's not going to be classed as severe.
The jump round lights frighten cats at women when you ask them that.
Stop us from agreeing this
Yes, they
this
do.
proposal.
I don't like
The
asking about
principle-
Beaver City cameras either.
I'm not taking comments from the public. Can I ask the
No,
public
you're
to
not.
remain
No, we
silent?
couldn't.
The
Definitely
principle of
not.
development is already accepted. That's the 50% affordable homes and the split. It's very clear what it says in Places for Everyone, and that some will be off-site. The fact that this is going to generate 141 affordable houses is a significant benefit to the city. Chair, I'm going to move that we go with the officer's recommendation.
You with a
Accept the proposal.
traitor and your young
Thank you very much,
protege
Councillor
next
McGrath.
door to you,
Councillor
is
Bates,
that? He's a naughty little
I'm just
bugger,
going to read
isn't
from
he?
what the
Grow up,
actual Her Majesty's Government
Look at
said with
It's
regards
an
to
ideal
the
little thing.
press release relating to the
Film
Infrastructure
this.
Planning
Look at
Act.
him. Rolling his
what it
eyes.
states here
Grow
is
up
Britain's
in it.
growth has been held back by a sluggish planning system, slamming the brakes on building. Today that changes. Our Landmark Planning and Infrastructure Act will tear down the barriers to growth, and this means getting spades in the ground faster, unshackling projects stuck in planning limbo. However, that Act also states, or actually the actual press release that the government issued, that it was also looking to ease congestion. However, there's nothing I've heard in terms of actually what is in this proposal, where there is any easement of congestion whatsoever. In fact, congestion will be made worse by this development, and therefore I will have to vote to oppose the development.
Good. Well done. I wasn't sure at one point then.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bates.
Bit naughty boy in
Councillor
corner.
Cody, please.
Young naughty. Look at him.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, everyone. I'd just like to draw everybody's attention in here, our panel members and the residents that have come, that everybody in here, regardless of what decision they come to today, has probably done a hell of a lot of soul searching. So please bear that in mind. Difficult decisions are being made.
But they've got bad
Now,
souls,
as
they don't
Councillor
need to think
McCusker
it's
says,
alright.
the scheme is already in the places for everyone. The traffic, as we know, is horrendous. Will it make it considerably worse? That's the question we're asking. The models say not, so I will second the proposal.
Thank you very much. You're seconding Councillor McCusker's proposal, is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Grogan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Traffic. Not going over what's already been discussed, but my concern with the traffic is the situation is already severe. This will make it marginally worse, so it doesn't meet the policy threshold for that. But my concern is around access to emergency vehicles. Can we, in good conscience, approve 282 homes in an area that is constantly gridlocked with only one access point in and out? That to me is a major issue. I would like to reject it because of the traffic, that the cumulative impact, but I know that's not on the table because it's actually consultees, so we can't do that. But in terms of getting, what happens if there's a fire? What happens if someone's ill in this new estate? There's one point of access and they have to sit through, what is it, like 10-minute waiting delays in the mornings, in the evenings, and according to Councillor Clark, at all hours of the day. Can I get some input from the council officer on that, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Grogan. Can I get a comment from Mr. Clements, or as to what the position is, excuse me, regarding emergency vehicle access?
Sure, thanks, Chair. Just to cover the phrase manipulated that I used earlier, it was attributed to data, it was actually attributed to the modelling. So the model will be manipulated/adjusted to make it more accurate. So it wasn't a manipulation of data, it was an amendment of the model to make it more accurately reflect reality. So just a point of clarity on that one. Emergency access to the site covered in the design code. So we've requested a 6.75 metre wide access, which gives us more comfort that if there's any issues and blockages at the access, you can actually get round. So that's a stipulation in the design code. Obviously, the application is in outline at the moment, so we don't have any detail. We just have illustrative layouts. But as that comes forward, we'll be seeking
as a minimum a 6.75 metre wide access. It also references a loop road in there, so that if you can't travel clockwise because of an incident, you could travel anti-clockwise around that loop. So there's measures and mechanisms within the design code that will set out the parameters for the reserved matters applications that come forward. Again, there's possibility of exploration of an emergency access, but it's not essential and it's not being presented at the moment. So those alternatives are a wider access road and an internal loop road that's stipulated in the design code.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grogan, you wanted to come back on that?
Yeah, obviously accept your points, but my concern is around getting to the access roads, not how the vehicles get into the site. If there's floodlight traffic on the main road, then there's no point having a wider access road in line with sign codes. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Clements. Anything you wanted to add further to Councillor Grogan's point? No? Councillor McCusker.
Yeah, I think that's a strange suggestion, but basically saying that everyone in Boothstown's life is in danger at the moment.
What?
Is that what we're saying? Because the fire engines go down those roads now, and they will go down the roads if this development goes ahead. There'll be a marginal increase at peak times, as we heard, that doesn't meet the severe. Fire engines will be able to get there, emergency vehicles will be able to get there, as they do now on that road.
Yeah, just to clarify, Mark said that data was manipulated to take into account. I did not accuse officers of manipulation, but the words were said, data was manipulated to take in there, so I just repeated words that said.
Good. Okay.
So you're making a personal explanation. Councillor Clark, can you sit down?
I'd just like to apologise if I misheard, and I want to apologise to the councillor, and that's it.
Thank you very much, Councillor McCusker. Councillor Clark, please carry on.
Okay. Can you explain what impact the delays will have on the bus services? Bear in mind that the bus services are totally unreliable as they are. And you still haven't answered why we can't see in the report the effects on the roads beyond Ellenbrook down into Boothstown, Stansfield Drive, Stansfield Estate, and all the other people that currently can't get onto Lee Road. That's going to make it worse. We need to see the full picture, and at no point has the full picture been displayed to us.
Thank you very much. You made your point regarding the issue. I will take the question regarding the buses and the implication of the buses. That hasn't been covered, but I'd ask, so rather than repeating points that have already been made.
Buses on the canals, what about that? That would be very damaging. Very damaging.
Stick to points that have not yet been made. Mr. Clarence, any comment on the bus and infrastructure and the bus implications for, and any material plan considerations relevant to bus travel?
Manchester United's new plan showed a canal bus, if you ask me, a yellow one.
Thank you. So in this location, this part of the network, there's obviously no bus priority. There's no lane that they can use to bypass normal traffic. So the same delays that were reported to vehicular traffic, cars, will be experienced by buses. They were presented for the AM peak in this table, so increased delay of 82 seconds is forecast in the AM peak. And in the PM peak, the majority of the increased delay is on the M60 off slip for a northbound movement, with Lee Road experiencing a 60-second delay. So yes, buses will not be immune from the same delays as the rest of the traffic, but those figures are not significant.
Councillor Bates, please. Sorry, for the microphone, is the microphone on?
Further to my last point, I mean, it's national government that's very keen to actually promote housing developments, not just here in Boothstown, Salford, but across the country. But it's vitally important
they fund the additional infrastructure required for that. That's,
yeah,
I mean,
Councillor Bates, we are in purdah, which means we need to be very careful not to make political comments. Things that are outside the control of this council and certainly outside the decision-making powers of this panel at this point shouldn't be discussed, especially when it comes to national policy. Again, it's due to legal restrictions on publicity since this is being live streamed. So,
oh dear,
can you
right, okay.
make your points as they relate to material planning considerations for this application. Thank you.
Interesting, eh?
No.
Yeah.
Councillor Stockley, please.
Just to echo Councillor Cusker's points there, that we know the road's a nightmare, that's a fact. I think we can all agree to that. But also it doesn't factor into material planning here because it's outside the application. Yes, it needs looking into. Yes, it's something that the council should take into account later on. But specifically here, we're working within the stricture of planning. And I don't think any of the points raised here are factor against it. So I think specifically what we're working on right here, there's no grounds for us to reject this application.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stockley. Councillor Cusack,
Councillor
please.
Studley or not, boy?
Thank you, Chair. I'm very sympathetic with residents in Boothstown. We've had a long debate about transportation issues surrounding the
Councillor
site.
Cusack.
We all know it's horrific at the moment. It's dreadful. We equally know that the impact of this particular development, according to the officers, does not make a significant change to that horrific state that we're experiencing at the moment. However, what hasn't been mentioned in the discussion, but was mentioned by the applicant's agent, planning agent, is that under the National Planning Policy Framework, there is a presumption in favour of development. And I am yet to hear a material consideration that in terms of balance overrules that presumption in favour of development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cusack. Councillor Clark, is this a new point?
Right. We seem to have dismissed as negligible the impact on air quality, and we're adding an extra 200 metre cube to traffic. Now, I'm going to do this in honour of an ex-resident of mine, Michael Howard, who is no longer with us, but he was very passionate about children's health and would always give a statement about children's health as air quality. Now, if residents are expected to walk their children down Lee Road, which is gridlocked with articulated lorries belching out smoke, they're most at risk of the receptor to increased traffic fumes because they're lower down. But we have dismissed that as negligible. So I think that is fundamentally flawed. Also, there's one doctor's surgery in Boothstown. How can we put 1,000 residents on average into that with no more provision? Also, the report doesn't mention secondary schools. It mentions primary schools. I'm not quite sure why we're not allowing for the extra capacity to be supplied for secondary school pupils. These are all material planning concerns, and I think we should have an answer to why that's not mentioned.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark.
Because we're being live streamed, but we're not, because we've got a few second delays and they
First of all,
mute people.
on schools, which schools are being considered, whether it's only primary school or whether secondary schools as well, in line with Councillor Clark's question, and also regarding doctors, whether or not a lack or a potential lack of medical facilities, how that fits in as a material planning consideration, and then afterwards we go to the air quality question.
Thanks, Chair. Just so in terms of schools, obviously there's a contribution that the applicants have agreed to, which is to be secured by the 106 agreement, and the identified pupil project areas do include primary and secondary schools. In relation to doctors and healthcare, this is something that's normally dealt with at a more strategic level. However, we have liaised with the NHS on this application, who requested a contribution. That contribution has been agreed by the applicant, and you'll see in the update report that the NHS has provided a further representation to confirm that they are happy with the contribution that's being proposed. Just in air quality now? Yeah. We could pass on to Mr Mason in a moment, but just to highlight obviously that Part of the package of improvements secured by the application will improve the connectivity and accessibility of the site, so there are alternative routes along the canal towpath, as well as the new route that's proposed to link the application site over to Quayside Close, which provides maybe a better route than along the road, but we can pass to Mr Mason if he's got anything additional to add. He's the technical consultant.
Mr Mason, is there anything to add there, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Just to add on the air quality side, a robust assessment has been submitted as part of the environmental statement. It's been assessed against current UK planning and legislative requirements, and the outcome of that assessment, as the Councillor said, suggested that the impact was negligible. It's a little bit like the traffic situation. That is a negligible impact on top of what is already not an ideal situation because of the existing traffic that's in that area. But there will be no new exceedances of the air quality objectives as a result of the development, and hopefully with the mitigation that we'll get in place through the travel planning and the alternative routes of travel, there are options for future residents should they choose to take them. So as far as
check his body language out, he's hugging himself while he's giving his no objections. That senior environmental consultant who's sold out to this day.
The application comes through.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else that needs to be understood, sir, or you want to that? Any further members of the panel? Councillor Clark.
Yeah, so can you explain to me why we can't get the 10% biodiversity on the site? We're obviously severely impacting the wildlife around, so apparently 62% of it will be off-site, which doesn't help the residents of Boothstown, it doesn't help the environment, and it doesn't help the wildlife. So can we explain why 10% biodiversity net gain cannot be maintained on site, or made, sorry.
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Clark. Can I have Miss Stewart, please?
Okay, so obviously having regard to the existing site and what's on site at the moment, the baseline was relatively high. The allocation obviously allows for its residential redevelopment, so it is acknowledged that there will be a loss of biodiversity on site. Some gains will be provided through landscaping, through as we progress through reserve matters. The legislation for net gain does allow for off-site gains as well as on-site gains. It's difficult at this stage because we don't know the full layout. The
it's deceptive, you mean?
Form. So in terms of the exact amount of gains that will be on and off-site, that will be developed as the scheme progresses.
The scheme?
Again, the ecology unit are the experts in this, and they have suggested that they're happy that this can be dealt with through the statutory condition, which will require an overall game plan for the site to demonstrate how the 10% will be delivered and what proportion will be on and off-site. And that will follow up with, because the application will be phased or delivered in phases. So phased game plans as well as the applications come through.
With a brand new model that's not been proven.
What will be delivered in that particular phase, how that will impact on the overall game plan to ensure that we do get the 10% overall, whether that be on or off-site or a mix of the two.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you look down.
Members of the panel wish to speak.
People living there don't think this small park is justified. We live in a day and age where we want to get children off screens and out playing outdoors. I just don't feel enough infrastructure has been provided. Obviously the traffic, which has been mentioned multiple times, play areas and doctor surgeries, schools, I think these things have to be taken into account. We cannot just dump 300 houses in an area and expect the local residents to just swallow it up and deal with it, and somehow it will just merge in. And saying that the added inconvenience is not severe, to me that's not enough. If we anyway have issues, that's not a reason to add on to it. And Chair, I would like to move that we refuse this this application based on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Before I ask you
right
what your reasons for refusal you'd like moved, I just want to get confirmation from officers regarding the infrastructure. I know that officers have covered in great detail the schools and the
I'm wondering
hospital
whether they'll have them.
so
They want
I
them
don't
up those
think we
homes
need
in
to
the
go into
slums
that again.
instead. You know, some
Regarding
places
the
like
park
Cheetham Hill where
and the
they're
play area,
very
small play
prevalent in
area for a
anyway.
large number of children. Can we just confirmation of what
Boxes, I mean, great big
how many
deep,
children this park
dense
is
boxes
intended
for
to be
people.
suitable for? How many children are expected to be resident in the area, and what the consequences are from a material planning perspective? Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Can we reshare the presentation, please?
Can you, Mrs. Robart?
So this is also a table which is set out in the published report as well, and sets out it's copied from the design code, which will be an approved document, and sets out the types of open space that will be required to be provided on site. So as you can see, as well as the play area, it sets out the quantum, the size of that, and public amenity space, and includes sort of trim trails and play on the way in addition to the play area. I don't think there's a specific number in terms of how many children it's intended to accommodate, just to say that it would be available to residents of the site, as well as obviously wider residents open to the general public. It meets the thresholds in terms of what should be required on a site such as this, so officers are happy with the level of provision.
Thank you very much. Councillor Leighton, are you happy with that answer, or did you want to come back on that?
The plan does show that there's 0.1 acres set aside. I understand that there's open area. I was talking specifically about play areas. Play areas, I mean, what my kids call it are swings, a slide, etc. I get that there's open spaces that we saw on the I think that's wonderful walks and wooded areas. I was specifically talking about the play area, which I just don't think is enough. And now we're hearing that this is expected. And we do see this. I mean, in my ward, we have also a play area which was built by a developer, but that now became the play area for the entire
smart city
community,
yeah, exactly,
surrounding areas as well.
By a smart city group.
I don't feel that enough has been done on surrounding infrastructure, including play
Maybe
area,
they know what it's
doctors,
like to live in Cheetham Hill, eh?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Press switch.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor. Just clarification from officers regarding the specific play area, whether or not it's a it's a material planning consideration that we provide swings and slides, for example.
I'm not fully aware of what's going on in Presswich.
Swings and slides are always good, and they're always useful for children and for adults. But we need to know how it relates to material planning, so just get clarification.
It is material planning consideration. It's something that's referred to in the allocation as well. Just referring back to the table, that sets out in terms of the area that would be required for children's play space, which equates to 0.31 hectares, and the actual area proposed on site exceeds that at 0.36 hectares. So again, it is policy compliant.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Stewart. Councillor Kuza, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'd just like to point out that the site is also adjacent to Boothstown Park, which currently has lots of facilities for children to play.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kuzak. Councillor Lightner, you moved to refuse. Can you provide the reasons that you'd like that this motion is? I can't take a motion to refuse without reason to refusal. Please confirm what those reasons were, please.
In the general terms, the reasons were the lack of infrastructure, including traffic and schools, etc. Schools, doctors. I take it there's a play area just next door, but supposedly that's already built and being used. This is exactly my point. We can't play both sides. You can't say, oh, there's already parks in the area, so we don't need one. And then when we say, oh, we're going to build a park which will also be used by the local community. We have to. It's great that we're building houses, but those houses have to come. We can't build houses with no roofs and say, all the other houses have roofs. Every house in every area and every community needs to come with their infrastructure. I personally don't feel, reading through the report and listening to them, both to the residents and to representatives from the applicant, enough has been provided for these houses.
Maybe that's where he feels his best defence, you don't know.
Thank you for the
bit of
clarification. We have heard
muting there
from
without some
officers that
interference
the
from
infrastructure when it comes
public.
to children's play is policy
I hope so.
compliant, so
It's not live though, is it?
I want to take legal advice as to whether or not
Look at this.
an
They tell you it's
application
live and it's not.
could be potentially refused due to lack of infrastructure when it is policy compliant. Can we just get clarification of such a motion?
It's not though, is it? Because it goes blank. They got
Such a motion is legally valid, Chair, and refusal could be made on those grounds where you might get into difficulties if that decision was carried and was then appealed, and if it's policy compliant, which officers are advising that it is, then that would suggest that it wouldn't form a defensible reason for refusal. But it would be a competent motion, because it wouldn't necessarily be
so it would have wind. And what I'm trying to big us up as to where we defend.
Advice that if we refuse a motion, if we refuse an application due to particular reasons, and it's found the application was policy compliant, then it could be overturned at appeal. So I'd ask members to have that in mind before proceeding. Councillor Lightner, do you have a second of your motion? Councillor Clark is seconding that motion. Okay. Councillor Hamilton, did you want to speak?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to sort of say this is really frustrating for everyone. We can only vote on what's material grounds. A lot of what we've heard, a lot of the points we've heard are valid. However, they're not. We can't vote on it if it's not materialistic. And on every point, it's been policy compliant. I personally would never play to the crowd. I didn't when we had Hazelhurst in my area where I live.
Good for you, love.
So I won't do that.
Like, but yeah,
I'll stick to my principles of how I've voted and what I think for the last 10 years. But it's frustrating for us that we've not got a vote on what we would like to probably vote on. We haven't got that. It's not in our gift. And like Councillor Craig said before, it's so frustrating for everyone, and it's awful for us as well. So I'd just like to make that point. Thank you.
Bloody face.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hamilton.
Look at his face.
That's well made.
It's not very professional, all that, you know. I don't find it professional, do you?
I'll just clarify why I'll second it. I'll second it on material planning grounds on highways. Unfortunately, the MPPF doesn't give us a definition of severe. It's inappropriate to have a document which is law that doesn't give you a bar to hit. But as we've all heard this morning, Lee Road is full. So if I had a pint of water and put it into a pint glass, it's full. If I try to put another 10% in that pint glass, I make a mess and somebody else has to clear it up. And that's what we're doing today. We are acknowledging, everybody acknowledges that Lee Road is at capacity and we're making it worse. It's irresponsible. So, on traffic severity, I believe the bar is hit, and nobody can tell me otherwise, because there's no piece of paper in law that can tell me that I'm wrong, because if there's no number attached to severity, I can call it that. Well, I'll also, more material planning grounds on health infrastructure, school infrastructure, and the lack of affordable housing on site, the lack of biodiversity on site as well. Yeah. So there's multiple reasons for material to refuse this application, and they're the ones that I'd like to put forward.
Councillor Clark, you've given multiple reasons for refusal. I just need to clarify again. We do need to have. I don't think it could be for more than one reason, I believe. But we just need to clear. So just to clarify, you're saying the impact on highways, you say health infrastructure, school infrastructure, biodiversity, and affordable homes on site. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark, for clarifying. Councillor, it was you were moving that motion, so can you just confirm that you are happy with that the motion being for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different 5 items? Okay.
Yeah.
Can I get some legal advice as to what the consequences?
What the consequences of having so many views are?
The consequences of a refusal for multiple reasons going to appeal. Is it necessary to win on one or all grounds? What happens if one or some of those grounds are overturned? What's the situation? Can I get some legal advice there?
In legal terms, if there is an appeal, it would be against all the grounds on which the refusal has happened. If any of those were found to be legitimate by an inspector, then the decision would stand, and those that were found not to be substantiated may fall away then. It could be refused on appeal for just one out of, say, those 5 grounds, and it would still therefore be a refusal. Equally, obviously, the appeal could find that none of those were substantiated, and in which case the appeal would be successful and the decision would be overturned and permission would be granted. And there could be a cost implication if we are presenting reasons for refusal that we are not able to substantiate, and particularly the test is that if the council is shown to have acted unreasonably, and one of the examples of unreasonable behaviour in the context of costs in a planning appeal could be an inability to substantiate grounds of refusal that have been passed, then there could be cost implications depending on exactly the outcome of an appeal in that situation. There could be a partial or a full award of costs towards a successful appellant. Does that cover it?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sterling. Councillor McGusky, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite clear that on biodiversity net gain and on the split between on-site and off-site affordable housing, we've been told directly that is policy compliant. So therefore to say the reason we're rejecting this is because we don't like this policy compliant. Yeah?
Yeah, what? Yeah, Pemma Ford? Do you buy me argument?
I'm not taking comments from the floor. Councillor McCaskill, please continue.
I bet you're not.
So, we know what the law is, we know what it says about the biodiversity net gain. It says that there needs to be a 10% uplift. How we deliver that can be totally on-site, partially on-site, partially off-site, or through credits.
All credits, yes. That trading scheme.
Compliant application in front of us in terms of those. You're just setting us up for costs. But doing a ragtag of let's put everything in and hope that we get one of them through.
You are setting us up biodiversity.
What the applicant will have to do when they do their appeal, they're going to have to rebut that, so they're going to put a load of work in. They're going to hire legal people, they're going to hire experts, and those costs will be passed on to us when
Look at him stroking himself, stroking his arms next door. They're not very confident to me then, lads. I don't think that's not
a motion to refuse on the grounds of highways,
body language
health
of confidence, I'll
infrastructure,
tell you.
affordable housing and biodiversity.
And his stooge.
And I have a second motion to approve the application with conditions as specified in the report. In accordance with the Constitution, we will take a vote on the motion for refusal first. However, any motion against officer's recommendations constitutionally requires a senior officer to give a short comment or briefing as to potential consequences and so on. So I could ask Mr. Stevenson if you could please speak on the grounds of refusal before we go to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've got 5 grounds that have been put forward as a counter motion. If I take each in turn, healthcare has been raised as a concern. We've heard from the officer that there's a contribution being made towards healthcare and there are no objections from the NHS on that. I think it's already also important to recognise that healthcare provision is dealt with at a strategic level. It's managed by the NHS and Integrated Care Board. So although it's right that individual planning applications make a contribution to mitigate their impact, it is nonetheless dealt with at a more strategic level. Schools, you'll see from the report that the proposal is policy compliant in terms of the contributions to that. Traffic, we've heard extensively about the work that's been done and the conclusions that have been reached insofar as the expert independent opinion is that the impact is best described as negligible or minimal, which in our opinion falls some way short of the severe test. The affordable housing, 10% on-site, 40% off-site, is policy compliant, and biodiversity again is policy compliant. So I've not heard anything,
I don't think so. Let's see your evidence. Let's see you.
For those reasons for refusal. And to reiterate what our legal officer said, if we're put in that position, not only will we likely lose an appeal, but we also open the council up to substantial risk of having to pay the appellant's costs for having to deal with these matters if found to be unreasonable. So I would caution strongly against reasons for refusal on those grounds.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stevenson. We do have a motion for refusal on the table. I'm now going to ask members who are in favour of the motion to refuse to please show of hands. If you wish to refuse the application, please show. Thank you. If you are against that motion to refuse, please show. Thanks. And any abstentions? One. Thank you very much. I believe the motion fails. We have a motion on the table to approve the application with conditions. Can all those in favour of the application please show? Thanks. Against? Please show. Any abstentions? Thank you very much. The application is approved with conditions. I'm now going to adjourn the meeting until 2:15, where we will continue in the Salford suite. Can members of the public who are leaving please follow the directions of the officers who are directing members out.
Make them sure they keep away from us and keep the sound off too, why don't you?